Welcome back. Long time no see. I'm going to call our meeting to order tonight. It is 5:33. In attendance, we do have all trustees in attendance. We have two on the phone. Trustee Hatfield and Trustee Olmsted are joining us on the phone tonight. Can I get a mover and a seconder for approval of the agenda? Trustee Sartori and Trustee Leclerc. Any discussion on the agenda? Trustee Sipcar.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. In discussion with Trustee Hatfield, I'd like to motion to defer item L10 to our next meeting in September.
Okay, so that we're looking to defer L10 to the first meeting in September.
Yep. Yeah. And I think if Trustee Hatfield's on the phone, she was planning on seconding it.
Okay. Do I have a seconder to approve that amendment?
Yep, I'm seconding that, Trustee Hatfield.
Trustee Hatfield, I did hear you, but barely.
Oh, sorry.
Nope, not at all. But that you seconded that?
Yes.
Great. Okay, any discussion on that amendment? Great. Any other amendments before, or actually we should vote on that amendment? Yeah? all in favor of that amendment? Defer that? Great.
Or
any other amendments to the agenda tonight? Seeing none, all in support of the agenda as amended.
support.
Thank you very much. Can I get a mover and a seconder to convene us into private session? Moved by Trustee Sipcar, seconded by Trustee Burgess. All in support? Wonderful. Reconvene back in here at 7 p.m. We're in private session. Back to order here in our public session at 7:01. I'm going to begin with our, I'll redo the attendance. We do have all trustees in attendance. We have Trustee Hatfield and Trustee Olmsted on the phone with us this evening. I'm going to read our land acknowledgement, and just before I do, I want to also acknowledge that today is Indigenous Peoples Day as well. And so this holds a little bit more meaning as we consider these words, and from wherever you are, consider the lands that you live on and what that means to you. So we acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenni Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Yodawa, Potawatomi, and Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Any ooh!
I'll get that.
Too many adjustments. Thank you, Director Kelly.
There you go, Madam Chair.
I think it's got to go the other way.
Oh,
I am a little aggressive.
There we go. You're all
Thank you very much. Now that we're all settled in, any declarations of conflict of interest for in here? Any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Actions of the board meeting private session. Trustee Cook.
We have one L1 under F1, I'm sorry, under new business. And may I have a mover? Trustee Sartori, Trustee Sipcar, all in support? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Going on to approval of the minutes of our May 17th board meeting. Moved by Trustee Leclerc, seconded by Trustee Sartori. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor of approval of those minutes? And that passes. Thank you so much. Any business arising from those minutes, trustees? Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none. Our presentation, our student trustee presentation. Who's going first today? Student trustee McCowie, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Senior Administration, Trustees, and Director Kelly. Ahead of tonight's presentation, Student Trustee Hawkins and I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the exemplary work of Student Senate. We have had the absolute honor and privilege of working alongside such a great group of formidable leaders across the system, and without them, none of our achievements would have been possible this year. So without further ado, let's take a look at the year in review from our perspective. Almost a full year ago, we anxiously began our terms and laid out a framework for what we hope to accomplish this year. As part of our campaign to better communicate and engage with the student body, we released a student input survey. At the top of the list of priority issues was anti-racism education, mental health, and student success and development. In the realm of student success, we released the first ever Student Trustees Guidebook to high school. Student Senate subcommittees were then struck in response to the student input survey. Student Senate was vital in planning and execution of the annual Student Leadership Conference, where students heard from exceptional guest speakers. From raising awareness about mental health and sharing resources to students to working on the Student Achievement and Development Committee, Student Senate surely had its hands full this year. We worked diligently with both senior administration and Student Senate to create a process for the election of student trustees in the Greater Essex County District School Board and implement it immediately for the incoming 2022-23 student trustees term. We were pleased with Superintendent Corbeck's support, we created the very first Student Leadership Scholarship. And beyond our own Student Senate, we collaborated with student trustees at the Co-Terminus Board to collect donations for United Way's Tampon Tuesday. The ability to collaborate with fellow student trustees has certainly helped us navigate our roles, and the Ontario Student Trustees Association was a phenomenal support this year. We had the pleasure of attending several meetings this year to identify solutions to various issues in education in Ontario. It was through discussions with other student trustees that we were inspired to do presentations for many of our elementary schools to spread our message of student leadership and promote the role of a student trustee. Back to our own Student Senate. We were pleased to collaborate with such formidable leaders. Through artwork and icebreakers, members of Student Senate have forged friendships we will surely never forget. Student Senate had the honor of electing one student of the month from across the board who exemplified the theme of each particular month. The following students are just a few of the countless that make the Greater Essex County District School Board such a strong, inclusive, and positive environment for students. We extend our deepest appreciation to these students for their leadership and school spirit. And spoiler alert for the Student of the Month for June. But beyond Student Senate, there are student councils, and ours never failed to amaze us this year. Each month, senators had so much to say about the initiatives in their schools that they were taking on. Spirit is certainly never dull across the board. And here's just some Spirit recaps from the Spirit Weeks across the year. It was also a great honor to present awards at our final Student Senate meeting to the student councils that truly work to better our community. For Student Trustees' Choice, we had Kingsville and Walkerville. Oh, I missed one. We had Most Artistic School, the Best Spirit Weeks at Kennedy, Best Community Engagement at Bell River, Most Involved for General Amherst, the Student Senate Leadership Award, the Best Council Crossover from Leamington District in Kingsville, and our Most Spirited School, none other than Massey, and our Senate Besties Senators from Sandwich. And we certainly cannot forget the astonishing work of all the graduating students this year. They've made it so far and continue to persevere against all odds. We are beyond proud of our fellow peers and congratulate all the Greater Essex County District School Board students on their accomplishments. As the school year comes to an end, we reflect on our experience as student trustees and truly have no words to express our appreciation and gratitude to the students that enable us to be the leaders that we are, to the senior administration that has helped guide us at every turn, and to the board of trustees that continue to encourage and support us. The role of a student trustee is unique, and serving the Greater Essex County District School Board is by far the best thing we've ever been a part of. Between the adversities of the pandemic and challenges facing education in Ontario, we have come to better understand the role of a student leader. To our Greater Essex County District School Board student leaders, please consider submitting an expression of interest for the position of student trustee in the fall. In closing, we are beyond thankful for the support of Director Kelly, Superintendent Corback, Michelle Marquez, and the Board of Trustees, and we look forward to seeing how the GCDSB continues to adapt and grow in the future. And without further ado, our final Student of the Month of the year.
Thank you very much for that report, Malik. And before I get into our Student of the Month, I would also like to give a recognition to Malik and all of the incredible work that he has put into both Student Senate and the school board this year, and wish him the best of luck at university next year. And without further ado, it is my honor to share the Student of the Month for June with you all. So the Student of the Month for June is Suleiman Sayed, a grade 12 student at Vincent Massey Secondary School and an outstanding role model for this month's theme of leadership. It may be difficult to stand out at Massey with over 2,000 students and so many passionate leaders working to make the school experience the best that it can be. However, Suleiman clearly embodies the spirit of a natural-born leader who is constantly working to better his own leadership skills and advocating for student voice. He doesn't just go above and beyond, he shoots for the moon to better the Massey school community. As a member of Student Council, he understands the importance of communicating with students. He seeks input and an effort for everyone to feel included and invites feedback and constructive criticism. He lives by the notion that no one should be left behind. He never fails to be seen running around the school, chasing down a new idea and organizing events to engage the student body. As part of Massey's Relay for Life committee, he coordinated and executed a 1,000-person event under tight timelines and immense stress. As chairperson of Massey's Muslim Student Association at Massey, he works fearlessly to ensure his peers have someone to turn to. He promotes an inclusive environment for Mustangs while sharing the beauty of religion and culture through bake sales, promotional posts, and even helping facilitate Friday prayer for students by purchasing over 100 prayer mats. Above all, he is passionate, courageous, caring, and generous with his time. He truly embodies this month's theme of leadership. Congratulations, Suleiman, on being selected by Student Senate as June's Student of the Month.
And we have Suleiman with us this evening, which is such a joy for us. Thank you very much for joining us here. And you can come on up and we'll get your picture.
Right up here.
That's right up here.
Oh.
Thank you very much to both of you, and congratulations again to Suleiman. It is, I liked what Student Trustee Hawkins had said about that you live and breathe, no one should be left behind. I think that is tremendous, so thank you very much for your leadership. Do our trustees have any questions for our student trustees on their presentation this evening? Trustee Burgess?
I wondered if they would give us some indication what their plans are. I know that student trustee Hawkins will be returning. I'm wondering what's next for our student trustees.
I'll admit it was kind of all over the place. I didn't know if I was going to go to Western or Windsor, but I decided that I'll be studying electrical engineering and be doing my master's and my bachelor's concurrently at U Windsor next year.
And as Trustee Burgess said, I'm very honored to be coming back next year as the student trustee again. I'm also super excited to be going to the new North Star High School in the fall. And I'll starting meeting with Aya Knafer, our new city trustee, this week actually. And we have lots of big plans for next year, and we can't wait to get to work. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. And let me say, it's been such an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us through what has been a very challenging year. The strides that you guys with Student Senate and with the support of students have made has been very inspiring. It's been a huge time of change, not only for the board, but certainly for students within the board. And you should be quite proud of yourselves for your leadership in that. And we very much are looking forward to having Paige back, of course, and to seeing what happens with you, Malik, as you continue forward, and go Lancers. So thank you guys very, very much. We have no delegations this evening. Moving through our agenda, we do have 2 people on the speakers list. I apologize for not updating you earlier on that. We do have 2 on the speakers list. Both are speaking to agenda item L8. And so we have Brianne Irish and Darcy Reno. Miss Reno, would you like to speak first? Wonderful. Can we have that mic set up for Miss Reno? Is it already just turned on? So Darcy, while you're getting ready, you'll have 5 minutes. And if you end before 5 minutes, that's great. If not, I will stop you, and then we'll have a chance for trustees to be able to ask you some clarifying questions.
Okay.
Okay, I will start the timer, or Miss LeBoeuf will start the timer whenever you get started.
Okay. Hi, I'm Darcy Reno, and I'm the mom of 2 kids, a 7-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy that attend a public elementary school in Windsor. And I'm here to speak in favor of Trustee Sartori's motion related to the dress code. And I'll tell you why. It's because I think, and I know we can sometimes be uncomfortable, and I even am sometimes with the clothes that teenagers choose to wear. I totally get that. But I do think that overall, the dress code that we have here in Windsor, Essex, for the Greater Essex County District School Board does more harm than it does good or benefit students. And I'll give you some examples of that. But first, I actually wanted to turn your attention to the school board's strategic priorities. Specifically, one of them, it's number 1. So that priority is creating confident learners through personalized learning, supportive environments, and trusting relationships. And I'll give you some examples, real life and in the academic literature, of why I think that the dress code as it's being enforced and as it's written now doesn't line up with that strategic priority. So my first example is my own, and as you know, it's really hot outside. So my daughter, who's 7, I asked her to just pick an outfit to wear to school that was going to keep her cool. And she picked this dress that I bought at Old Navy. It's really cute, I think, and it's long enough, but it's got a racer back. And a lot of the dress codes, as we know, prohibit racer back tops. She's 7, but I had to tell her that she couldn't wear the cute dress that has a rainbow on the front. I think it says "Be Kind," because it has a racer back. And she said, well, why can't I wear a racer back? I said, well, because it shows too much of your shoulders. And she said, looked at me like I was an alien and said, well, what's wrong with my shoulders? And I honestly didn't know how to answer that question. I don't know what to tell her about her shoulders and why she can't show them in a racer back thing that I got at Old Navy for ages 7 to 8. So I kind of did a little poll of other moms that I know, acquaintances and friends, what their experience had been when it comes to the dress code. And I got some I got some examples that I'd like to share with you. And one is a friend of mine that I used to work with. Her daughter was 5 at the time, and I remember her at work getting multiple calls that she had to go to the school and bring new clothes for her 5-year-old daughter in SK because the tank top straps didn't meet the 3-finger rule. She also told me that another girl in her class had the collar of her shirt pinned up or tied by a teacher because when she leaned over, and she's 5, let's keep in mind that she's 5, when she leaned over, it was too low cut and you could see down her top. So I think we can all agree, we can't be hauling 5-year-old girls out of class and calling their moms and having them have to leave work in order to bring new clothes for 5-year-olds for things like the size of the straps on their tank tops. But I also want to talk about some of the research literature while I have 1.5 minutes left. And so it's important to know that there's no evidence there's no consensus that dress codes lead to higher academic achievement. You will not find that in the literature. We also know that disproportionately dress code violations are given to girls. So in one school board that actually tracked the data, they found that 83% of people who were dress coded were girls or women. Also, this means significantly more lost time of learning for girls because we know they're taken out of class. And if that's the case here, which it probably is because it is everywhere that we have dress codes, it's disproportionately girls that are dress coded, then we've got a big problem because they're losing time in class. So does the benefit of the dress code outweigh the harm of this loss of learning that's happening? The other articles I found, one demonstrated that school dress code enforcement creates an environment, and this is a research study of girls who had been dress coded or went to school where they had dress code policies. It found that it creates an environment in which girls feel physically and psychologically unsafe. Another found that dress code policies, as they're enforced and disproportionately against girls, result in a toxic learning environment for many female students by selectively enforcing the policies against them. So again, I'm going to just turn you back to that strategic objective I talked about at the beginning and ask whether, if that literature is true, and I assume it is, whether the dress code policy is in line with that strategic priority. Oh, 1 second.
Well done, Ms. Reno. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. Do we have any questions for Ms. Reno of clarification on her speakers list this evening? So I have Trustee Sartori and Trustee Halberstadt. Go ahead, Trustee Sartori.
Hi, thank you for that. And I'm very sorry to hear about some difficult conversations that you had to have with your daughter and some anecdotes that friends and acquaintances have shared too. I appreciated you sharing about the academic research and some of the outcomes of that, including targeting girls, resulting in lost learning time as well, and concerns about the environment, feeling unsafe. I assume that comes from feeling judged and centered out and so forth. I'm wondering if you saw anything in the academic literature that you reviewed around socioeconomic status, if there tended to be sort of higher concerns or a higher level of enforcement happening because of the policy that different schools had.
So not a lot of places have actually tracked and kept statistics on the enforcement of dress codes. The one that I cited showed, again, that 83% of dress code violators were girls. So, but that's one school board that tracked the information. I looked a lot. Now, there is another study that shows that dress code violations were recorded, again, as you mentioned, for girls disproportionately, racialized students disproportionately, and yes, socioeconomically, like low SES students disproportionately compared to the percentage of them in the school itself. But it's not well tracked, but what we do have says that, yeah, you're right. And I can give you a personal example from the moms that I spoke to as well. They emphasized to me, one I know who was called often last year because her daughter's shirt was too short. It wasn't a crop top though. Like, it wasn't meant to be a crop top. It just so happened that her daughter sprouted up really fast. And she hadn't, you have to renew kids' wardrobes every season because they're growing, but this happened so quickly that she hadn't had time to buy a whole new wardrobe for her daughter in order to ensure her shirts didn't rise up when she put her hands in the air. And so if you don't have a lot of money, it's going to be hard for you to continually be buying new clothes. Never mind finding clothes. Like I said, the dress I bought was from Old Navy for 7-year-olds, but it had the racer back. That's not allowed. So it's tough.
Thanks for that.
Trustee Halberstam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to know if you think there needs to be changes. You support Trustee Sartori's motion. What would you say about, you're not saying get rid of dress codes altogether. Some people are thinking that, so I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
Well, I did think about this, and I thought, since my examples apply, the examples I gave are really young kids. Would you apply it to a specific age, for example? But I don't think that's the right way to go. And I know the new dress code's being adopted by boards around Ontario and a lot in the US based on even some human rights challenges that have come before the school boards related to dress codes, are that it needs to be something where it's not discretionary. So if it happens to be a hot day, the dress code doesn't apply that day. I think that's dangerous ground, so that if we were to have one, I think we should have one, but I think it should be the bare minimum, and that meets the criteria set out in Trustee Sartori's motion. And that it should be uniformly applied to all ages and all students.
So you're not saying eliminate dress codes, just to how they're used and how they're enforced?
Well, I don't think any of the school boards that have changed their dress codes the way the motion reads here means there's no dress code. But so there should be some kind of dress code. For example, at work, I can't wear open-toe shoes because they're not safe, right? So that obviously should be something that's part of a dress code, student safety. I agree. So I don't think eliminating it completely would make sense, because we do need to worry about student safety. But I think what she's proposed in her motion makes sense, that it be revisited so that we don't see a disproportionate effect, negative effect on specific groups of students.
Thank you very much. And Trustee Chin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. And my question is regarding the research article regarding the 83% dress code violation is targeted to girls. I cannot see anything wrong, because I think the girls is special, kind of different with boys, and in their body and in their, psychology. I think wear properly is kind of a protection for the girls, and also respect for the girls, and also for the people around. So I think if there is anything wrong with the dress, it's understandable that it might be, girls dressing.
Is this a question for?
Yeah, it's a question. I'm just thinking why you think it's not reasonable that the dress code violation is targeting more on girls. I think it's very reasonable, logical, understandable result. So it's a way to protect the girls. I think so, right? Thank you.
So I guess I'll just say that I think and the Ontario Human Rights Code, I think, would agree that any legislation, policy that disproportionately affects a specific group who's covered under the Ontario Human Rights Code, such as gender, race, then it's not a fair policy, and it needs to be changed. You can't have a policy or a law that has disproportionate negative effects on a specific group covered by the Ontario Human Rights Code. I guess that's what I would say.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think we might have a kind of misunderstanding regarding the fairness. I think people, God created the world, is everything is have their own beauty and have their own characters, and you cannot just make everything the same. So it's also a way of respect the diversity, and the girls, because of the the physical character is they are kind of not as strong as boys, and they suffered violence more. So they are kind of the suffer more. How to say that? So that's why we need to protect them more and find some way. So I really don't think that if you want to make all the policy.
Is there a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, if you want to make every policy the same effect, can you change the result about the violence on the woman? Equal with the man. We cannot do that. So why do we, want everything else be the same? If the woman suffered the violence more than other people, how can you, change that? And this is obviously a protection. So why do we have to move that? Thank you.
If I may, am I allowed to answer a question with a question?
It's not, no.
Okay, I guess it'll be rhetorical then, so there's no need to answer it. But you said in your comments that you're protecting girls, but you didn't say what from. And I guess I would ask what, asking my daughter not to wear a racerback shirt when she's 7 is protecting her from. I think I'll just end it there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh. Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. And we do have a second speaker this evening, Miss Brianne Irish. Brianne, if you'd like to come up to the mic, you will have the same 5 minutes, and then we will open the floor for questions of clarification. Madame LeBeouf will start, and your 5 minutes will start whenever you start.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Greater Essex County District School Board trustees, administration, and guests. My comments tonight are regarding Jessica Sartori's notice of motion that was put forth regarding the dress code. The Greater Essex County District School Board strategic plan was thoughtfully prepared in accordance with the goals and the mission of the board. The plan states that the Greater Essex County District School Board will prioritize student success and well-being by creating confident learners through personalized learning, supportive environments, and trusting relationships. Engaging communities through equitable and reflective practices that respect and honor our diversity, as well as demonstrating ethical stewardship through thoughtful and intentional use of financial, human, environmental, and community resources. It is my belief that the notice of motion recommendation fulfills the strategic plan of the board and its mission to best serve student success and well-being, as the basis of the motion is to encourage our schools to be a safe space for students where they can learn and receive the needed support, and to build trusting relationships that are not based on bias, oppression, discrimination, but rather founded in equity and respect. The current policy as drafted does not provide equity to all students regardless of socioeconomic conditions, race, creed, religion, gender expression, etc. Nor does its interpretation by the individual educators in their enforcement of the current policy. It's currently up for individuals' interpretation of the written policy, as it's individually governed by each school individually. That means from class to class, educator to educator, administration to administration, there's a variation in the policy as it has been written. As the Greater Essex County District School Board modernizes their policies and practices, we look forward to your support and commitment to our students tonight, that they will be respected, that their school will remain a safe place for them, for each individual student, staff within that building, for them not to be shamed or embarrassed based on what they are afforded to be able to wear on their bodies, and that there will be guidance to both our educators and administration on how we can best serve our students and their families. Tonight, and through your role as trustee representing our communities, you may receive or have received specific examples of violation of the current trust policy and how it has been perceived to have affected the rights of other students. For every story that has been provided to you, there's another side to which simple perceived violation and enforcement action solutions may not be appropriate as what's currently stated within the policy. I implore you to look at the situations from both a clinician and equity officer's perspective. There's a larger conversation that needs to occur with our student population, and this needs to be done respectfully and facilitated in a manner that is consistent with the board's, with the Greater Essex County District School Board's improvement and equity plan as drafted that was established to address these matters in a meaningful way. Tonight's motion, as recommended, supports the Greater Essex County District School Board's work and communicates to our children that they will be respected and supported. I'm thankful for your time, your ongoing support, and advocacy that each of you provide to our communities to support every learner every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Irish. Thank you very much for sharing your comments and for joining us this evening. Do we have any questions? Trustee Sartori.
Thank you. So you had, thank you for that. You had mentioned sort of differences in interpretation, and the previous speaker had mentioned a sense of discretion as well. So, so to clarify with my motion, one of the things that that I would like to see happen, because currently we have sort of board guidelines, and then each school, right, is responsible then to develop their sort of school's policy toward dress codes. And so I'm wondering if you can sort of comment on that, right, that there is not only, you know, I guess interpretation within schools, but between schools as well. And if you would agree that that it would make sense to have one policy for all schools, essentially.
Absolutely. I think as we are navigating into new territory, when we're looking at diversity and inclusion as a whole, this is not just segmented to race. You know, we are looking at so many different socioeconomic factors. We're looking at gender expression. We are looking at an application of things as we modernize as a society. And I think it's really important that the board stands as the leader of that policy, where it's not subject to interpretation, that this is something that we believe as our core fundamental beliefs, that this is our mission, and this is the way that we want our educators to educate. This is the focus point, and this is the way that we can collaborate within our community partners, different groups, to be able to hear what some of the limitations and the boundaries are to these existing marginalized groups. I think that Trustee Chin had said very explicitly about student safety. And the way that students are dressing is affecting their safety long term. And I hear that as a parent. And I'm very concerned about that message, because when we send our children to school, we want them to be safe. We want them to be in an inclusive area where they're not fearing for their safety. We don't have someone judging them based on what their dress is. But as educators and as administration, we should be providing guidelines and support to say, what is the fundamental underlying concern that we need to look at as to why students are dress coded, why they are violating, because it's a deeper reason. Socioeconomic limitations, maybe this is trauma that they have experienced, but how can we provide them with, support in any area that we need to? And this is my thought as a public board that, is responsible to its constituents, fiduciary duties, as well as these types of issues. I think that this should be solely governed by the decision makers in this room, because we trust your judgment, and we trust that you are going to welcome our children in to be safe and welcomed every day, because that's the faith that we put in allowing our children to attend your facilities. And as trustees, if you feel that our students are not safe based on their dress, that further demonstrates why this is absolutely vital that it is addressed. because those concerns need to be embedded into this policy to make sure our students, our women, our girls, as well as our boys, or however you're expressing your gender at that time, is respected. Because that's their job when you come into those doors at that school.
Trustee Chin?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Since I mentioned, I do think that the dress of the girls has relationship with their safety. That has been researched. I think there is no other option, and for even in the school. And if a girl, the school is a place to study, and we should provide a supportive environment for study, and if a girl, I'm not mentioning very young girl, if a elder girl and they are matured, if they wear very does not cover a lot, and it do affect the people around them, affect the male teachers and male students.
Trustee Chin, we
Yeah.
are debating the motion right now. We are asking the speaker
Yeah,
a question.
we
are asking the speaker a question of clarification only.
because I'm pointed out as trustee, responsibility.
But this
Yeah.
is a time for questions of clarification to the speaker.
Yes, can I ask a question? Thank you. And so can you answer why you think the dress of a girl does not relate their safety? And do you think a girl has total free to wear anything, to wear very less to greater extent, and it doesn't affect any of her safety, and it won't affect the other people around them to have some wrong conception on her? Can you answer that? They don't have any relationship? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question. I think that from your question, what I'm hearing is that you are in agreement that a review does need to be conducted because you feel that it's currently inappropriate for certain dress to be worn. I respect your opinion. I feel that the motion that's been put forth tonight is not to abolish a dress code. That's not what it states in the notice of motion, the way that I haven't read and interpreted this. What's being asked is that a review is conducted to make sure that the dress code that is put in place is appropriate to ensure that there is no racial bias, that there is no socioeconomic concerns that have not been fulfilled or met, that it's not anti-oppressive, so many other different factors. So I feel that from your question that you've asked me, that you agree that a review does need to be conducted in order to ensure the safety of our students.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yerish. Quickly.
Yeah, I'm not against the review of the rules to improve, but I'm worrying that we are going to the wrong direction, and we have made misunderstanding regarding the fairness and inclusive. I do worry about the wrong trend. Yeah, thank you.
That wasn't really a question, but thank you, Ms. Yerish.
Thank you so
I
much.
very
Have a great night.
appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Trustee Hatfield, did you have a question?
Yes, please.
I'll just have Ms. Irish back, and she's back. So go ahead, Trustee Hatfield.
Thank you. So I was just getting a little bit confused about some of the comments that have been going back and forth. But so my understanding from the ministry mandate with regard to dress codes is that there's a requirement for the dress codes to be established at each school autonomously, and that they have to be approved by the parent council. that's the group that has I think the final say on what the dress code is going to be for the school. So I'm trying to understand if what's being advocated, because I understand the underlying principles of the motion. I don't have a problem with that. But I'm trying to understand from the two presentations, if you're advocating for the abolishment of the parent council's right to establish a dress code at their schools, if you're advocating that be abolished in support of an overriding policy that the board is supposed to establish before September, which I think is in contravention of the ministry. So I'm just getting a little bit confused on what the message is, that you don't want the schools to be allowed to have the input into their dress code, and that we want just one overriding policy that's established by, I guess, the administration over the summer and mandated to the schools. So that's where I'm running into some confusion about what the message is actually coming from, like what the message actually is, other than that you want dress codes to be reviewed. So I don't know if that means an individual review of each school's policy, or that we abolish those policies and have an overriding dress code.
Thank you so much for your question, Trustee Simcoe Hatfield. When we're taking a look at these overall policies, understanding that it's a provincial mandate to have the parent councils involved within that individual decision, I think it's really important to note what the current state of our parent involvement committees are. So as a former chair of our Home and School Association, as well as of our parent involvement committee, as being a member at large of our GECPIC program as well, there's not uniform participation between all of the schools. So I really feel that when we are making these kind of discussions, I absolutely feel that a consultative method is needed, where the input is it's done collaboratively with our local school parent involvement councils, but that conversation is organized, it's led, and it is a collaborative process with the board to lead that discussion into meaningful conversations that will actually produce results that can be applied throughout the board uniformly. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Irish.
Thank you.
Thank you to both of our speakers. I will note that this is item L8 on our agenda, and we do have quite a bit to get through. You're welcome to stay, but I just wanted to make you aware that we're going to make our way through the rest of the agenda, and that is where that item will appear. Oh, Student Trustee McCowie. It is, unfortunately. Sorry. Okay, so we're going through our agenda. We're on to L1, new business for our Ontarians with Disabilities plan. The recommendation is that the board approve the 2022-23 plan in accordance with the Ontarians with Disabilities Act for the year September 2022 to August 2023. Is there any presentation on this or no? They'll be open for questions. Can I get a mover for that? Trustee Cook, and seconded by Trustee Sipkar. Any questions for administration on this? Trustee Halverstadt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I notice on page 32 where they're talking about our policies, what we're going to do this year with regard to making our schools more accessible. And on page 37, East Mercia and Gosfield North, what is being proposed for those two schools are creation of a universal washroom. And I just wanted to find out what that is. That's a same-sex washroom. And do we have any others? If so, how many? And how come two of these schools are going to have them and the others are not?
Thank you. I'll defer the question actually to Ms. Hinchliffe, who's here with us this evening.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. A universal washroom is a handicap accessible washroom. The building code now calls them universal washrooms. That's the only change.
Okay, so there's nothing that we do that where girls and boys go to the washroom in the same room.
In terms of gender neutral washrooms, we have encouraged schools to either use a single use washroom or a handicap accessible washroom as the gender neutral.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from trustees on this? Wonderful. I will call the question. All in support of the recommendation? And that passes. Thank you so much. Going on to L2, we have our Northwood Public School Space template this evening. The recommendation is that, subject to board approval by the Ministry of Education, the board approve the elementary school space templates for the addition at Northwood Public School. Do we have a presentation on this evening? Superintendent Armstrong.
Certainly, I can speak very briefly to the report that's in your package today. As part of our Administrative Procedures BA 35, we bring the school space template to trustees for their approval prior to it being submitted to the Ministry of Education. As part of the Capital Priorities Program for 2021-22, the board was successful in receiving capital funding for a 184 pupil place addition at Northwood Public School. And so in your package today are the space templates. It shows what the existing school looks like, what the addition itself on its own looks like, and then what the resulting school looks like. We've provided some background information in that report as well. It will be an 8 classroom addition, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Do I have a mover and a seconder to put that recommendation on the floor? Trustee Burgess and Trustee Cook. Do we have any questions from trustees? Trustee Burgess, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 8 new classes at Northwood, and we've known that it's been needed for quite some time. And I want to know about the air conditioning. The last expansion at Northwood had I don't know how many classrooms, and they weren't air conditioned. For a brand new expansion, that was problematic for me and a lot of people in the building. So I'm wondering, is there going to be any kind of opportunity here to increase the air conditioning for the whole building or for the areas that are adjacent, et cetera? Or is it going to be parts air conditioned, parts unair conditioned?
Ms. Hinchliff, is that you?
Okay. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question. Yes, the addition will be air conditioned. The 2 most recent additions have ventilation systems that are almost at the end of their useful life. So there are opportunities to look at those 2 systems as well, which is the 2 most recent additions, and provide some conditioned air. Similar to what we've done in the past year with the new ventilation we've put in schools, the energy recovery ventilators with the heat pump systems that we're using has provided a marked improvement in comfort for students. It's addressed humidity concerns, and our building system officer insists that that's the key here. So I followed his advice, and we've seen some marked changes in schools like Glenwood, Central, et cetera. So at Northwood, the last 2 additions prior to the new one were energy recovery ventilators. So this is an easy system to put in. Most of the rest of the school is now air conditioned because of that. The large gym, music room, library, office are all air conditioned. There is the ventilation that was put in the rooms that weren't ventilated, provided the energy recovery ventilators. So I think I'm going to suggest 75% of the school will be air conditioned by the time we're done. And we will continue to look at opportunities as systems age out to upgrade and provide that kind of comfort to our students.
Supplemental?
Yeah, just so I understand. So the new addition you're saying was serviced by an expansion of some sort of ventilation, HVAC, something that was in place beforehand? The old, the previous addition that now has like the heat pump thing or whatever. Does
So,
it-
so
has-
each,
I'm trying to figure out where the aging thing, where the trunk line ends.
so each edition has a separate ventilation system. Okay, so it's really easy to upgrade as we go.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? I have Trustee Halverson and then Trustee Sipcar. Go ahead, Trustee
Thank
Halverson.
you, Madam Chair. So why can't we find some synergies now when we're doing this reconstruction and have all of the classrooms equally served by ventilation or by air conditioning? Sorry.
It's strictly due to funding streams. When you go for capital priorities funding and have to get approval for the ministry, any renovations in a school that would be impacted by this project, we have to get a ministry approval. So it is much simpler to put the new addition in and then start dealing afterwards or before the new addition with the other opportunities that are in that school. It's strictly a simpler process.
Trustee Sipcar.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. My questions have really been answered around the air conditioning, but the one quick question that I had was, if I'm understanding page 37 correctly, the new resulting school, is the new addition going to be about 40% of the added area? Is that? I'm trying to understand that chart there to just know how much as a percentage this addition will be.
Thank you. If you go down to page 36, at the bottom of the page, the addition is going to be 10,491 square feet. The existing school right now is 76,435 square feet, which is on the bottom of page 35. So it's the math of 10,000, and the new school will be 86,000 square feet. So it's about, 15%.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get at because I wasn't sure how big the actual addition was, but that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from trustees on our space template? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of the recommendation as it is in front of us? And that passes. Thank you so much, trustees. Moving on to L3, we have a policy and recommendation for risk management. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Trustee Leclerc and Trustee Sartori, do we have any questions on this policy and regulation? Any questions? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the recommendation as it is in front of us? And that passes. Trustees on the phone, I don't want to ignore you. I'm assuming it's a yes unless I hear a no. Unless you want to pipe in at any time. I'm recognizing that you're there and it may be a little slow to the punch, but you're here with us. So we're moving on to L4. We have our special education plan, the recommendation that the board approve the 2022-2023 special education plan for September 2022. I have a mover. Trustee Cook, do we have a seconder to put this on the floor? Trustee Sipcar, do we have a presentation on this evening or any? Superintendent Wilcox, I was about to promote you to trustee here this evening.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, there's no. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. There's no formal presentation, but I would like to thank the very hardworking members of our Special Education Advisory Committee. It's a lot of work to use our monthly meetings from February to June to review and edit the plan so that it meets the needs of our exceptional students. And of course, our SEAC includes Trustees Cook and Trustees Olmsted and Trustee Chin. So thank you very much to them. There are no major changes to our programs or services this year, and we are excited to be putting the special education plan up on the board website in the fall so that we can get public feedback this year.
Thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions on this evening? Trustee Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday, I vaguely asked a question in the budget process, but I'll make it really specific. We have a new school opening this September called North Star, which will incorporate Western Secondary School. The programs at Western Secondary School traditionally, and how it's been incorporated into the special education plan, served a really specific student, all of whom had IEPs or IPRCs. And I'm wondering, because I didn't really see it reflected exactly, are we going to expect any changes, either enrollment numbers in diversion of students to home schools more, or can we expect the same kind of enrollment that would have been students at Western to attend North Star? Or is it going to be changing to a more kind of regular comprehensive school and the special education needs being at a higher level, basically at Western, not be incorporated into North Star? As far as the services and the staffing and the resources and all of that, is there any compromise at all at the new facility?
So, so just so you're aware, almost all of our students who are at Western and their families have chosen to have those students come to North Star, so we're very excited about that. We will be offering the same types of programming. We are very excited, and I know we talked about this yesterday. We have committed to all of the support staff from Western moving over to North Star to support students there, so they know the Western students very well. And it will benefit from having 3 CYWs to help with students, help support students through the initial transition.
Thank you very much. Student Trustee McCowie.
Sorry, my questions are probably common sense, but I'm not really familiar with the process for how IEPs are kind of created and assigned to a student. So I was wondering, it says that the classroom teacher prepares the draft IEP, and that's shared with key team members. So what does that process look like? Like who is considered a key team member, and how do you approach a situation where a parent or guardian may not necessarily want to throw the IEP label on their student? And the only reason I ask that is because there's something in here that says on provincial report cards, the IEP box will only be indicated if the student has a modified program. And the way I read that makes it seem almost, and sorry if I'm interpreting this wrong, but as if checking that box is somehow a bad thing or something like that. So I was kind of wondering, what does checking that box even really mean for a student in terms of their report card or their post-secondary plans, and what does that really look like for the student?
Okay, so there were a lot of questions there. That's okay. No, they were great questions through you, Madam Chair. So to begin with, for a student to be on an IEP, we have 2 types of IEPs. We have a formal IEP, which a student is put on through the Identification Placement Review Committee process. And we have non-identified IEPs. The people that determine whether a student has an IEP would be the school-based team in conjunction with the parents. The parents are a big part of the process and always have been. And parents often have the final say in whether a student's going to be given an IEP moving forward. And what were some of the other things you asked? Sorry.
About modified IEP check.
Oh, so a modified IEP. So there's 2 types of things we provide on an IEP. So there's accommodations, which is things like providing more time for a student writing assessment, situation of where they're situated in a classroom so they get more support from the teacher. And then there's modifications, which are actually, they're different grade level expectations for students. And a lot of that pertains more so to elementary students.
And can I ask? Okay, I'm sorry. And then just on top of that, I feel like people often have a misconception of students who have an IEP, and a lot of people often think that it might limit a student in terms of what they can do after high school. So I was just wondering, for the transition from from high school into post-secondary, regardless of which pathway they're taking, I don't know how to word this, but do we often find that students still have that autonomy to make a decision of where they want to go no matter what? And do we find that their learning is still supported at the post-secondary once they leave the Greater Essex County District School Board in some capacity?
So we actually have transition programs for students that are going into college and into university, and so those are organized through our special education coordinators. And so students go there, and often with the school's learning support teachers, take groups of students to the university and the college so that they can hear about what types of accommodations can be provided to students who are on an IEP. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for that. Student trustee McHale, you probably would not have been around. We had an extensive presentation at an education committee. I can't remember when that was, 2019, I want to say, where we went through all of this because I had a lot of those same questions. They are not. They're great questions. And just for everybody's knowledge, IEP is?
Individual education plan.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're used to using acronyms.
We always do. Yeah. Trustee Jean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make some comment. I really appreciate the special education team. They really do a lot of work, and especially during the pandemic, they pay a lot of attention on how to protect those kids, special kids. So I would like to appreciate their hard work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And I think we've put a fine point on that last night with our budget discussions about the types of support that we give to students at our board that we're all quite proud of. And thank you very much. So I do appreciate that. Any other questions, or can I call the question quickly? Go ahead.
It's not a question, but I think while this is a marvelous report, I think we have to kind of double down for those who weren't tuned into last night's scintillating budget meeting, that we deliver this plan with a $9.1 million deficit. Okay, so we have to find that money somewhere in our budget. So by passing this, we're really making a commitment, a huge commitment, and I want to thank all of us, but I mean, business, everybody, in order to deliver this and to make a commitment, because we deliver an outstanding program.
That is absolutely true, and we. I'm glad that you draw that connection, because that is effectively what we do here when we do this, and we further reinforce it up through our strategic priorities. And we've made a commitment at this board persistently and consistently, even given that rising need, that we're going to fund that, and it means a lot. It really does. So, all in favor? Thank you very much. That passes. On to L5, we have a policy for mental health and resilience staff. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Cook. Do we have any presentation on this evening? Nope. Any questions for administration on this?
I do.
Trustee Hatfield, go ahead.
Thank you. So the policy statement on page 134 of our package. My question is, so the policy is that our board is committed to working collaboratively with its employees to create and sustain a psychologically healthy and safe work environment. My question is, could I get from administration clarification on exactly what the meaning is in the word psychologically? I mean, I generally know what it means, but I want to be sure that we're encompassing everything that we need to in this policy to meet the mandate of what we're trying to achieve here. So I'm just not sure how the word psychologically is being used.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. So there's actually psychological standards for a healthy workplace, and SBCI will be leading us through that. There's 13 of them. An example of one would be civility in our work environment, and they will work through, there's individual workbooks that we will work with our staff and our management and supervisors to be able, excuse me, to work through each one of the 13 areas of the standards.
Oh, well, I'm glad I asked the question, because I was a little bit timid about asking it. Maybe I just don't understand enough about what the word is. But with your explanation, I feel a lot better about asking the question. So when we see the regulations, will it like make reference to those standards?
The administrative procedure will make reference to those.
Oh, yeah, right, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. That sounds like a lot of work, like good work that we need to ensure the well-being of our staff. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Indeed it is. Thank you very much. Any other questions on this? Seeing and hearing none, all in support. This policy is recommended, and that passes. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're on to L6. I would put L6 and L7 together, but, okay, so we do need, I will note that we do need, because one is a bylaw change, we require 2/3, so that would be 7, but 7 would also allow the other to pass because we need a simple majority. So if the desire is to move both of these together, I see that there is the desire. Trustee Burgess and Trustee Leclerc have decided to move those two things together. I'm happy to answer any questions. I will note that we had an ad hoc bylaw committee consisting of myself, Trustee Burgess, and Trustee Cheen who've made these recommendations here. And if there are any questions that we have about them, we can answer them as well as administration can help. Student Trustee McCowie.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but are we going to, does the bylaw reflect, the language in the bylaw right now regarding student trustees is that we're appointed, not elected, and there's mention of the student trustees interview committee. Will the bylaw amendments reflect that we've changed that?
We did not complete that work at this particular bylaw committee, but thank you very much for bringing that up because that will be work of a bylaw committee that will need to be done. So thank you very much. We'll make sure that we note that. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Any other questions of both what are we at? 6 and 7. You have a question? Go ahead, Trustee Burgess.
I appreciated the work, and I knew that there were some still outstanding things, but we needed to do this certainly because it has to do with the next term, et cetera, so that anybody who's a candidate understands what's going to be happening. So to that end, since there is still kind of outstanding work, is the ad hoc bylaw committee still going to meet, or is the work done?
I think we discussed at the last meeting that we would look into some other dates. So yes, and we'll add that to the agenda. Yes, wonderful. Okay, so we've got our bylaw revisions and our November meeting date at L6 and L7. All in support, and those pass. Great work, team. All right, we are at L8. So we have notice of motion in front of us. Do we need me to read it out, or do we have it in front of us enough? We have it in front of us enough. Do I have a mover? Trustee Sartori. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Leclerc. Anybody have any questions or would like to speak to it? Trustee Sartori as the mover.
I would like to speak to it. And actually, I'm wondering if I can make, and tell me what the requirement would be. So because the current dress guidelines are included in the Code of Conduct policy, what I would like to do is make an amendment to my motion that just got put on the table, if that's okay, that the Greater Essex County District School Board review and update the current Code of Conduct regulation in the 2022 to 2023 school year with a board-wide student dress policy that is grounded in equity and so forth. I can read that again. So really it's just to reflect that it's currently part of the Code of Conduct regulation and not its own policy.
So that is to clarify the process that it is currently in, and so we'll be reviewing that.
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder for that amendment?
Okay,
Seconded
thank
by
you.
Trustee Cook. Do we need that read out? One more. Would you mind reading that out
Yes,
one more time?
I can do that. So that the Greater Essex County District School Board review and update the current Code of Conduct regulation in the 2022 to 2023 school year with a board-wide student dress policy. So cross out in the 2020 blah, blah, because I just did that. That is grounded and so forth.
And that has been seconded.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Any discussion on that amendment? Trustee Leclerc?
Nope, not on the amendment, yep.
On the amendment, go ahead, Trustee Leclerc.
Just for the sake of clarification, the intent of the change is to ensure that we engage with parent councils, because if there's a regulation that parent councils have a school level final decision, that we're going to try to come to some kind of agreement with them, so we end up with a overall arching dress code. Is that the intent?
The intent was more to reflect the fact that it's not its own like dress code policy that's a standalone policy, that it's part of the code of conduct. Yes, it's part of the code of conduct regulation, but I will address that in my comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
On the amendment, Trustee Sipkar.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to understand, does that mean that it will go to the policy committee? Is that the intention as it applies to a regulation?
It would, yep.
Trustee Halberstadt, did you have a question on the amendment?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is part of the amendment, but it's the part where the students should not be embarrassed or shamed in the process of a dress.
That remains in the motion as amended. Trustee Burgess on the amendment?
I just want to make sure that I know the amendment doesn't restrict us more than we want. My understanding is that, and I'm sorry, I'm a bit foggy, that the school dress code being determined by a really prescriptive process and number by school councils. And it's generally looked at in the use of uniforms, I'm just going to say, that's usually where it's used, okay? But the dress code that's in provincial policy, I thought that was either in school council regulation or it's in safe schools. I'm not sure where it is.
Is that a question to administration?
Well, it's about the amendment though, because you're talking about a board-wide policy, but the regulation, I understand that's still there. I wish I had it right in front of me, but it's provincial and it gives each individual school council, not the PIC, but each individual school council in consultation with the school community. That doesn't, I just want to make sure the amendment doesn't preclude or it doesn't have sort of conflict with that, because this is a board-wide policy you're talking about. Review and update the current, to a board-wide policy. Where's the room for the school council to make that, different decision about their just.
So that question is to the mover. I will allow
Thank you. So I was looking at that as a separate issue that would be debated on the main motion once the amendment is, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on the amendment?
I do.
Trustee Hatfield?
Thank you. So just to follow along from Trustee Burgess, I guess I'm still a little bit unclear as well how that amendment gets us into a position to be consulting and collaborating with parent councils who have the ultimate decision on this in time for the 2022-2023 school year to begin. That's just, 2 months away. So it sounds like with the amendment and with everything else that's required in the motion, I'm just not clear how we get to all of this over the summer.
To the mover?
So that is not part of the amendment. I would actually say it's not relevant to the amendment, but it would be relevant on the main motion, and I am happy to address that once we go to the main motion.
Okay, maybe because I don't have it in front of me, the amendment. I'm seeing it a little bit differently, but okay, I'll go with whatever you say.
Any other questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment? And that passes. And so we have an amended motion. On the amended motion, Trustee Sartori.
Okay, thank you. So for the past year or so, and I'm hoping that in my comments here, it will help to address some of the questions that were asked earlier and asked just now. So for the last year or so, the Greater Essex County District School Board has been undertaking a review of our approach to and strengthening our commitment to equity, inclusivity, and diversity. We've made a commitment to equity in our recently developed strategic priorities, which include confident learners and supportive environments, engaging communities through equity and reflective practices that respect and honor our diversity, and demonstrating ethical stewardship of resources. Student success and well-being are at the center of these priorities, and we're undertaking a review of many of our policies through an equity lens. So I believe that student dress needs to be a part of this conversation, and our current appropriate dress guidelines, as was established just now, are embedded in our current code of conduct, which I'll just read a few pieces in the code of conduct that I wanted to highlight. So the code of conduct, which was last reviewed in 2015, so I would say it's due for a review anyway, talks about requirements for pupils, and I think that there is some there's some good stuff here. Being diligent in attempting to master such studies as are part of the program in which pupils are enrolled, attending classes punctually and regularly, being courteous to fellow pupils and obedient and courteous to teachers, as well as exercising self-discipline, accepting such discipline as would be exercised by a kind, firm, and judicious parent, and being clean in person and in habits. So these appropriate dress guidelines represent the board's guidance to schools, right, which then adopt their own dress codes or develop their own dress codes for their school communities in consultation with stakeholders in those environments. I'm not suggesting we take consultation away. We've heard from speakers tonight that in elementary school, for example, strap width, length of skirts and shorts are specified, and that these policies tend to target girls. But we've also heard that dress policies can be supportive and positive if viewed through an equity lens. So what I'm looking for tonight is approval for this motion from trustees for a board-wide approach that is adopted by all schools. So that is the initial intent. I would look for clarification from administration. I believe the policy can be positive and supportive as opposed to what can be sort of perceived as controlling and threatening. And to be clear about that, so that no matter which school a student in the board attends, they can expect equitable and inclusive practices as described in the motion that is on the table that support their autonomy and individual identities. And to answer one of the questions that was asked earlier, I would envision that the updated policy involve consultation with stakeholders across the board. I wasn't suggesting that it be ready to go by the 2022-2023 school year, but that it be developed and a consultation process occur during that time. So what I would expect, though, that the policy would be in place by June 2023. So also would look to admin for comment on timelines there. So I'm not trying to rush anything. So I suggest that the consultation occur during the next school year. I would also invite comments from administration about any violation of ministry legislation to do a policy that would be adopted by all schools. And I would ask as well then if you can comment as well if this would be a contravention, how Toronto District School Board and Hamilton Wentworth managed to do so. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think Superintendent Corbeck is perhaps going to answer these questions because we have had much discussion about this. So
thank
You're
you
here.
For the question, and through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I think there's two questions there, Trustee Sartori, so correct me if I'm wrong. What are our requirements and obligations in terms of parent consultation as it pertains to reviewing and updating school appropriate dress policies? And then question two, if a board-wide policy is not or is in contravention of those obligations, and how has it been done in other school boards? So I don't know that I can answer question number two tonight, but I certainly am looking to consult in other areas where that's happened. What I can say about question one is, in general terms, yes, we are required to consult. But there's sort of three pieces here. So there is the actual regulation 612 from the Education Act that requires that the board seek consultation with parent councils if they are going to, and I'll give you the exact language, develop policies and guidelines respecting appropriate dress for pupils in schools within the board's jurisdiction. So that's the actual regulation. But then there's also a guideline developed by the ministry for members of parent councils. It's quite dated. It looks like it was developed in 2001, revised in 2002. And it speaks to two levels of consultation, one board level, two school level. So in short, we can develop a board level dress code regulation, but that would require consultation of school councils. But then the development of those particular dress code, appropriate dress guidelines at the school level would also require consultation with the parent councils at the school level. I think it's an important sort of point of clarification to say, though, it is not the parent councils themselves. It is the majority of parents in the community that have to be consulted, with the understanding that the councils are representative of the voices of the majority of parents. So I think we need to draw that distinction because I think it speaks to our process and methodology around how we will actually engage parents and access a fulsome sort of representation of parental voice. The last thing I will say, in the guidelines around parent councils, it does require that a full-scale school community consultation is required to develop an appropriate dress policy for your school. So develops an interesting word because it seems to speak to in a space where one did not exist before, as opposed to a review and an update. I don't know if I can clarify that tonight, but I think that's probably a question for legal. So in short, yes, we need to consult with parents. There are a number of different pieces that we're required to follow in terms of doing that. And of course, we will ensure that whatever process we undertake in the reviewing and update of the appropriate dress section of the Code of Conduct will be consistent with what we're required to do in those different ministry pieces.
Superintendent Hillman also had something to add to this, I believe, for that supplemental.
Thank you, and through you, and just in terms of supporting that explanation, in addition to the provincial legislation of 612, we have developed our own policy and regulation for school councils, so regulation AD03, which is primarily the use of the 612 provincial legislation within our own. We do have a segment within our own regulation on school councils. Item 3, roles and responsibilities. Section A, school councils shall. Item number 4, have the opportunity to provide input on, and there's a list, appropriate dress for students. So I just wanted to note that same language is within this regulation as well.
Supplemental?
Yes, thank you for that. So just clarification actually for my colleagues then. So I don't expect any, I'm not suggesting any contravention of legislation. But should this motion pass tonight, then obviously any sort of corresponding changes that would need to happen to other potential policies would follow from that, which I think is typical due process anyway.
Through you, correct.
Thank you very much. So I have trustee Leclerc, then trustee Sipcar, and then trustee Burgess. Trustee Leclerc, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do support the motion as it's presented, and I support that because I believe that from a perspective of equity and inclusion, we've been looking at a lot of issues, and I don't see this as any different. That it's time for us to look at it from that lens. I also support it because I think it's just time that we have a policy in place that is fair and equitable to everybody. I am troubled by comments related to the safety of our students based on how they dress. Our students should be able to attend school knowing that their environment is safe, period. I reject the argument that females have a higher standard or responsibility in their dress over males because they're females. I reject that argument. So because of that, I do support the trustee Sartori's motion. I also worry about comments that have been made about how male staff interact with young female students based on how they're dressed. That's troubling to me because if that's the case, the problem's not the student. So because of what Trustee Sartori's put forward today, I support it. I think the public needs to understand this is the first step in a very long process of consultation, examining other boards' policies to come to a very robust, equitable, and fair process. This is not an walking away from having a dress code, period. It's about equity and fairness for all our students. And every student matters, right? And that includes female students. And if female students are being held to account by the way they dress significantly more than males are, there's a problem, and we need to address it.
Thank you. Trustee Sipcar.
Thank you. So I have a few questions I just wanted for clarification towards administration. Then I also have a comment, but I can save my comment till the second round. So through you, I just was wondering if as a board, at the board level or at the school level, do we do any sort of tracking in terms of dress code violations? What would be those violations, and what would be the types of punishments and severity? I don't know if we have any sort of information on that.
Yeah, thank you for the question through you, Madam Chair. I don't know of any data that we currently have collected, but that doesn't mean we don't have the capacity to collect that data. We do track in our information system different kinds of referrals and for what reasons those referrals happen. So that's something we could certainly do internally and look at some of that data and see what we could mine from the data that we have access to.
Sure, thank you. As a supplemental, I think what my thoughts on that are just, we heard relevant data tonight around it disproportionately affecting female students, and I was just curious if we would know any of that, and as you mentioned, we might, we just have to mine it a bit more. So thank you. I think that's probably helpful to have that when we have this discussion at the policy committee level, should this pass. And I should also, the second question on that would follow from that, is this something that admin or the principal's council or any more senior levels discuss? Does this bubble up, I guess is what I'm asking, or is this something that is really at a school level? And I guess why I'm asking that is because we hear a lot anecdotally from parents, as a direct response to the community. And I'm just wondering if there's any sort of feedback from our own staff or things like that we've heard. Also would probably be anecdotal, but.
Yeah, thank you for the question through you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, when you say does this come up, do you mean concerns about inequities and disproportional impact of student dress policies on students?
Sure, that or just general comments about the dress code. You know, one school may be having something that the other school doesn't, and that kind of thing. I just don't know if it really filters upwards. Is kind of my question.
More and more, yes. And I think, to Trustee Leclerc's comments, I think our lens for viewing things that we have historically done is different given the nature of our current work. And so I think as we build our own capacity internally to view things through maybe a wider, more proportional lens, then I think it's natural to sort of assume that those kinds of conversations are going to happen more consistently. So I would say yes, it is a topic that comes up more regularly than I say it would have in the past.
So I have Trustee Burgess and then Trustee Chin. Go ahead, Trustee Burgess.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So it's on the table for discussion and debate and questions and everything. And I have a few. I support the motion and the gist of the motion. But I have some questions, and I'm assuming by the discussion that if it is carried, that it will go to policy. So to give guidance to policy and obviously administration who's going to be developing this. I've dealt with dress code policy for all the time that I've been a trustee and prior to. And it's been in really different capacities because there's been a community expression for changing dress code over the years that included everything from revising it so that it would be equitable and or bringing in uniforms at schools, etc. And that sounds like the exact opposite of freedom of expression and etc. However, that consultation about, for example, introduction of uniforms could be used at a board-wide level if you were, for example, a board that embraced uniforms in all your schools and all your high schools, for example. I don't want to go there, but there is an opportunity, and I bring it forward because over the years, and it's been decades now, right? So over the years, we've had discussions about gender-specific classrooms. We still have a policy on our board that if there was a request in our schools to have gender-specific classroom assignments for students, it's still on the books. It hasn't been taken away. I don't know of any. We've never really implemented it. But, there is literature about, students not succeeding in the ways they want because they're adolescent, and just because of the nature of socialization, etc., girls may not want to put up their hand in science class because they look too brainy or whatever, So there was a discussion, and we did have a superintendent that actually did, I think part of their PhD on it. So it was about uniforms. I don't want this to preclude those discussions because they have arisen over the years. There was a contingent of parents who really wanted uniforms at Westview Freedom Academy when Forster was closed. Like I said, the process is prescriptive. You need 2/3. You need so many of this larger school community. You have to have a lot of consultation, et cetera. So it didn't fly. But I don't want those things, those opportunities to be lost in the discussion that has happened up till now. Because the other thing I hear, and I absolutely, I remember back in the day when it was all Trevlac, that used to be tracked in Trevlac, was dress code violations. That was one way we could find it. But because there's no standardization of what words were used, we couldn't mine the data, but we did see it because it would result in some sort of discipline. I'm always troubled by the notion of judgment for dress code around what a community standard is, because we're a community of communities. There are schools in our across our system that not only would embrace uniforms. Peel District School Board has a school that has uniforms in Brampton, one school, because the community really wanted it. Public schools can do that. But the idea of the notion of modesty and decency, et cetera, and safety and being in your own skin and what's allowed, that's where I think policy committee and administration is going to really have to be really careful and understand fully what an equitable lens is, because it does not mean the same thing to every single person or in fact in every school. So as long as there's some flexibility over overarching board-wide policy and the opportunity for school communities with school council and consultation with school communities to have some flexibility, I'm good with that. And I'm assuming that because I think it's protected under that regulation, 612, et cetera. So I support it, but I just don't want those parts missed. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Trustee Chin.
What's with the sign? I got this one.
I know how I am. It's okay.
Does that mean something is wrong?
No pushing your sign.
Be careful, don't stand here. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry, I don't know where to start, so many to speak. Because I do read a lot of emails from parents and teachers, especially teachers. Their concern is that they worried that the future, if we, kind of make less the dress code, make that looser and more freedom on that, it might, affect the environment. And it's kind of considering the most of the students, we need to protect most of the students. And some action that we are taking might affect, more students, more people, including teachers. So I want to be careful. And based on email which mentioned about the GCDSB's strategic plan, I do analyze the three objectives of our plan, and I think freedom of dressing, I think will lead to the damage of supporting environment. Because when the students studied here, they want to focus on study. If somebody wear too sexy, it do distract the people. And I also have the experience. When I learned my PhD in a classroom, we facing a girl dressing very, 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 I don't know how to say that, sexy. So I try not to see her. And I believe that other people have the same feeling. So I don't think that it will not affect supporting environment. And also, the freedom of dressing does not mean, diversity. And different people have their diversity, we respect. But if whatever, less you wear is not a kind of diversity, we should respect. We should have a, minimum level of acceptance. And it's not respective to other people. And the third plan, that freedom of dressing may not be ethical. If we don't have the proper dress of code, it may kind of damage the common ethics of people, and we will have damage on that. So that's my concern. And based on this motion, that we are going to have a board-wide consultation, and because we don't know what's the result of the consultation, I would recommend that we delete the part, in this motion, the last part, that dress code treats dress code violations as minor. That holds that no student should be subjected to removal from class for dress code violations or embarrassed or shamed in the process of a dress code inquiry. Because if we will have a correct policy, and if in the future, if something happened to violate the policy, violate the rule, we should have some way to handle that. So you don't know how much they violated, why you should say that we treat everything, as minor, every violation as minor. I don't think it's logic, because you even don't know if someone come here bare without any, clothes. It's extremely situation. But if this happen, then we still treat it as minor. We still cannot remove them from class. I don't think it's very logical. So I think we should, open the, how to say that, make it open, depend on the public consultation, and don't make conclusion that we treat it as minor or we cannot remove anybody. So that's, I think that part should be removed from the motion. Thank you.
Are you suggesting that as an amendment?
Yes, I'm suggesting it to remove that.
Does that have support, that amendment? Supported by Trustee Halberstadt on the amendment? To strike, so the amendment is to strike everything after protected grounds.
Yes.
And that's been supported. On the amendment, comments on the amendment, Trustee Halberstadt?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I support the review of the dress code. I think it's long overdue. But the thing that kind of troubles me is that last part of this motion, which basically says no student should be subjected to removal from class for dress code violations, or here's the key words, embarrassed or shamed in the process of a dress code inquiry. Who decides what embarrassed or shamed is? And would it be the principal doing that to a teacher, disciplining a teacher for embarrassing or shaming a child, or supposedly? How do you define that? And I think that leaves it kind of open. That should be defined. It shouldn't be embarrassed or shamed. Maybe it's, how do you define embarrassed or shamed in this particular context? So for that reason, I support I support the movement to review our policy, but I don't like the second part. I think it actually puts our teachers in an untenable situation, or could, if they are accused of shaming or embarrassing a student, which they may or may not, and who decides?
On the amendment, I have Trustee Sartori and Trustee Burgess. Go ahead, Trustee Sartori.
Thank you. So I appreciate the comments from the two trustees speaking to a proposed amendment. I don't support the amendment. I think that we need to stand back and think about this from the student's perspective. I know of, undisputedly, situations, unfortunately, in our own board, where students have been removed. They've been removed, unfortunately, repeatedly from class. They've been taken out of their classroom situation. And to be removed from classroom time in order to have the way that they are dressed become the priority in that moment, as opposed to learning, I think needs to be covered in this motion. As for students, feeling embarrassed or ashamed in the process of a dress code inquiry, I think it all goes together. I think we heard, from speakers tonight. I know that I have heard, from parents and students themselves about it happening, unfortunately, due to things that I had addressed in my opening remarks, including strap width, and including the length of their shorts and skirts. And so in approaching the wording of the motion, really from the student's perspective, that is why specifically I included those phrases in the motion, because I do want them to be an integral part and an integral consideration during the consultation process and ultimately the updated policy.
Trustee Burgess.
Thanks. On the amendment to strike those words, and maybe for clarification, the first part of the motion talks about grounded in equity, anti-oppression, anti-racism, anti-discrimination, and equitable and inclusive education that recognizes Ontario Human Rights Commission protected grounds. I totally support that. The second part about the consequences of it or the process, no shaming and no embarrassment in the process of the inquiry, and that no student should be subjected to removal from class for dress code violations. I'm assuming that there's an assumption there that there are some dress code violations that have been considered minor and should have been treated as minor, and they haven't been, and they have included embarrassment and shaming, and that it's been something that's been ongoing and it needs addressing. However, when you have somebody who dresses in something in a provocative way specifically to rile somebody, and it's offensive and it includes some sort of grounds that are protected under the Ontario Human Rights Commission, I'll just make something up. You're wearing something with swastikas all over it or something. I'm assuming that that's not going to be treated as minor and that person will be removed from class and they will have, a chat, and that there will be a process of the inquiry and it'll be equitable and all of that. If they persistently want to, attend school and go run and change in the washroom and come out with the same, offensive attire, then I think it's a progressive discipline thing. I don't really support striking this because I think I'm assuming what's behind it, that the minor things should be treated as minor. But there are some dress code violations that obviously are not minor, and that they will be included in this first part of the motion. And that, so from, to the mover of the original motion, I'm going to ask, is my assumption correct that even though this says that treats dress code violations as minor, there are going to probably be exceptions to that are not going to be seen as minor? Because this seems, I think, if I could hear from a previous speaker, for the amendment, this is kind of definitive, they're all minor. They're not. There's a scale.
Questions back to the mover.
Sure, thanks for the question. So in my mind, a violation like that, and there may be others, isn't actually about the student dress. It's actually about the potentially hateful message, which would be covered in other parts, in either in other policies or in our code of conduct policy itself. So in my mind, I'm only talking about like dress, right? So specifying strap width, specifying the length of shorts, right, for example. But a violation like that, to me, it's not a dress code violation. That's something else, and it should be taken very seriously.
I'm not going to say a supplemental, but I do have another question, and so I'll just wait. There is a question I need clarification of.
I'm going to ask that you succinctly ask it now, because I'm not going to ask for a second round of questions on the amendment, just so we can kind of plow through our agenda.
Yep, I got it. So it's about athletic clothing dress codes. I remember the time in swim club where they allowed a two-piece. You used to have to wear only a one-piece, et cetera. That was very strict. I also remember a very contentious issue at Kingsville District High School where the girls' volleyball wanted to go to the kind of bike shorts and something else, and it was very controversial and big, thing in the school community, because by some folks it was considered provocative, indecent, and lacking modesty, and with others it was like, no, this is how I like to play volleyball, and this is like what I want to wear to move in, and I don't want to wear the big baggy shorts and whatever. So it was functional rather than a judgment on the modesty piece. So I just want to make sure that in this overall, this is not specifically on the amendment. That's why I said I would have a supplemental on something else. Is the dress code for athletic wear and whatever, would that be included in this? Because there were punitive things about the teams that wanted to change their uniforms as well.
Okay, so that's not on the amendment, right?
It wasn't treated as minor, the dress code stuff. So the athletic stuff.
So is that a question to someone or just a comment on that particular?
It's a question, and I didn't think it was exactly with the other one. It's a question on clarification for the main motion, really, on whether or not athletic dress code is also included. Generally, it isn't, but I want to know if that's going to be part of the review and update.
So in terms, can we get someone to answer that question in, I don't know if that's administration or the mover, Superintendent Korbach.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Chair. What I can say is that in reviewing some other policies that have been updated in other parts of the province, they do, to the earlier point, I hear the point about it really being a violation of something else when it's offensive and potentially harmful, the messaging, but they do also draw a distinction in those policies between those kinds of violations versus just a clarification there. And there are sections as well on athletic dress, dressing appropriately for a technical classroom, for example, health and safety. So those things aren't lost in some of these updated policies that we're seeing across the province. So certainly we'll look to including those pieces in any updated policy that we create here at the board.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate that clarification a lot, particularly about the tech stuff. You're not going to be wearing a tie. It's not offensive. It's just
Absolutely.
dangerous.
Thank you. Trustee Sipcar on the amendment, and then I will call the question on the amendment. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. It'll be quick. The reason why I won't be supporting the removal of the second part is because I view the first part as of the values, and then I view the second part as the process and the outcomes. And I think that any process or any policy that we would have that would involve shaming or embarrassing a student is completely inappropriate. And while I don't want to specifically bring up instances, I know that there have been specific shaming things that have happened, and that it was probably with the intention of teaching the student or getting them not to change their behavior. And I don't believe that's a good approach to behavior change, and I wouldn't want to support that at a policy level. And so having that included in this motion as a guiding process point, and also what the outcome would be if it is to shame, I think is important, because that is what we're, I think, trying to move away from. So I won't be supporting the removal of that second portion, so the amendment.
So I'm going to call the question on the amendment, and the amendment, just so we're all very clear, is to remove anything after protected grounds in the amended motion that is.
Sorry, I've been trying to get in here. Trustee Hatfield, I've been trying.
Okay,
Haven't
Trustee
found
Hatfield, I'll take
spot.
one very short, but I honestly, we need to move beyond the amendment. We need to make a vote on the amendment and
I
come back to
understand that, but everybody else has, had their turn as they wanted, and I've been trying to wait for a pause to be able to get my name in there. So, with regard to the proposed amendment, I want to go back to the fact that historically the Board of Trustees have dealt with dress codes on more than one occasion, and similarly across the province. It's been a hot topic for many, many years, and I think that was one of the reasons why one of the first levels of authority that was given to parent councils was the dress code mandated by the ministry, was because there was recognition that the parents should have a loud voice in this. And so my concern, although I do support on principle everything that's been said, and I understand why the motion is prescribing certain outcomes, but I guess that's my problem, is that we haven't yet consulted with the parent councils. We haven't even made reference in the motion that they will be consulted, so they don't really know that that's going to happen, but yet we're already prescribing to them what will be the outcomes. And I do find that problematic. And I think back to some of the times where we did put to the school councils the question of school uniforms. We didn't one way or the other prescribe to them what the outcomes should have been from those consultations. And so I am having a problem with any motion that doesn't specifically prescribe that we're going to have the consultations, and we're not acknowledging that the parent councils have the right to determine the dress codes, yet we are prescribing to them what the outcomes should be. And in that, I'm having a little bit of a problem. I think the first part of the motion that talks about equity, anti-oppression, and all the rest, in my mind, that hits to all the points in the outcomes that we're hoping for. But I think that to make the outcomes part of the actual motion is not fair to the consultation process.
I'm sorry, did you have a question there, or was it just the statement on the amendment?
Well, I guess my question would be to administration. Is it appropriate that we direct a motion to our parent councils for consultation that already prescribes outcomes, expected outcomes, or required outcomes in this case?
Director Kelly?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I think the consultation will tell us whether indeed this is deemed as appropriate. So it's not necessarily problematic.
We're mandating these outcomes in the motion. That's the difference.
I would suggest
we're not suggesting, we're mandating.
I would suggest perhaps it's not the feedback from the community that could be altered. Superintendent Corbeck, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I can, and through you, Madam Chair, I think that we have addressed the question of parent consultation and made it clear that we're obligated and will indeed engage in that process as we're required to do. So absolutely that would be a obligatory piece of any process that we engage in to update and review policy around student dress. I think the second part of the motion, as I'm reading it, may speak more to how it is addressed within the school setting, not so much what the guidelines are for what's appropriate. So I think that's maybe different from consulting on what the regulation will say around guidelines for appropriate student dress, which certainly will we'll engage in parent consultation as required to do that.
So I could just say that I think administration is being very diplomatic in their remarks. I still see this as mandating outcomes, and I am uncomfortable with that, even though I don't disagree that there's value in these outcomes. The value I understand and I would support, but mandating the outcomes is something that I'm wrestling with. And I don't think that was
I'm going to call the question. I know there are a lot of people that want to get something in on this. We are going to still be returning to the main motion. We have.
No, I would really like to respond to that, because what I would suggest is that there are times that the Board of Trustees and that administration do lay out specific guidelines that are included in these words here, and so we're talking about consequences. We're not talking about the dress code itself. We're talking about consequences of a dress code violation. So if we look at this another way, if there was a parent council that decided that corporal punishment was necessary to bring back for absences or something like that, or a dress code violation, or speaking back in class, would that be something that we would entertain? Absolutely not.
Thank you.
I have something to say. I'm the mover. Excuse me, I'm the mover.
Absolutely not.
Since you gave trustee.
Absolutely not. You will be ejected from the meeting if you do it again. Thank you. We will have decorum in this. You
Like not give me the chance. I'm the mover of this
Trustee
amendment.
Cheen, that's enough. There is a code of conduct that we adhere to in this room. You will adhere to it. We will take a recess, and you will be removed from the meeting if it continues. I understand everybody's emotions are high. I understand, and I want to give everybody voice. There is a way that we do that in this room that respects everyone. We are talking about respect right now. We will do it to each other.
Can I ask
No. We are calling the question on this amendment. If you would like to be put in the queue for a final comment on the main motion, I'm happy to do that. But right now we are calling the question on the amendment. All in favor? All in favor of the amendment? That's been supported. Anyone on the phone supporting the amendment? And that fails. We are back to the amended main motion. I do have Trustee Cook, and then I have Trustee Sipkar, Trustee and Student Trustee McCow. Go ahead, Trustee Cook.
Thank you. So I just want to say that, some of the remarks that have been said tonight really makes me sad. I've heard some remarks of blame and shame towards females. And this whole motion I'm just going to say comments have been made towards females. And that makes me sad that there's still that blame and shame towards females. This motion is not about that. This motion is overdue, and I'm very proud of Trustee Sartori for bringing this up. There's more to it than just a girl coming to school and somebody has a problem with what she wears. This encompasses so many more students and how they feel about themselves, their gender, their sexuality, whatever term you want to use. That's what this is about, is coming to school and feeling comfortable, being accepted and respected. So it's not about, someone sitting there and someone else has a problem with it. Well, I'm sorry, but the person who has a problem with it is the one that needs to be removed. The part about the shame and embarrassing, I think a lot of people are jumping the gun on this motion. This is a motion to go through a process of consultation. This isn't something that after it passes tonight is law. This is the beginning of something new that meets the needs of all students. So we have to remember that. And right now what happens is that there's so much interpretation, not even just here, but in each school. Each teacher has their own beliefs. So they interpret what someone is wearing with their own beliefs, and that's not right. So we need to let go of some of the stuff that maybe is personal beliefs and look at the whole picture here. So I am proud to support this. Thank you.
So I have trustee Sipkar, student trustee McCowie. I'll make a comment and then trustee Chin, I've got you in there as well. Go ahead, trustee Sipkar.
Thank you. I will be supporting this motion tonight in its entirety and echoing Trustee Cook's comments proudly as well. I see this motion as a way forward to support students in various capacities and appreciate that it is values-based as opposed to prescriptive in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed. And what I mean by that is I think we are moving, or this motion moves the policy away from regulating bodies, and particularly women's, and as there being the focus or the object. And I think that we often forget that in this conversation, and I see this as us moving towards creating a policy where we're focusing on students as the subject. We're focusing on their behavior and their freedom of expression, and also creating confident and engaged learners. And so I think what I appreciated about this motion is that it is grounded in those values that move us away from, I think, harmful practices and towards better practices in our school board. And so I will be supporting it. I'm looking forward, if it does pass, I'm looking forward to the discussion at the policy committee level and also the consultation that we do hear from the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Student trustee McCowie.
Thank you. I'll start off by saying thank you, Trustee Sartori, for bringing this forward to the board. Like everyone already stated, it is long overdue, and it's an important discussion that we have at the board level. Now, I know I'm not a binding member of the board, but I will support the motion, and I will say that most students in our school board will support it as well. It's not about necessarily what students can and can't wear. It's not about telling kids what they can feel comfortable in. It's not about regulating bodies within schools. This conversation is simply about, can students have the freedom, the choice to express themselves using their clothes in their schools? And the answer is yes, but the way that we have it set up in our school board right now doesn't permit that, unfortunately. Having different, not necessarily policies, but school rules, depending on which school you attend, and different levels of enforcement, depending on the administration, it doesn't cut it. From discussions with student senators, you have schools who enforce this very heavily and schools that turn a blind eye to dress code violations. And I say, even using the word violation with dress code doesn't even sound right. It feels wrong to say that, because how could you tell somebody that what they wear to school is wrong? No kid wakes up in the morning, puts something on that they feel comfortable in, that they feel good in, and tell themselves, I want to be embarrassed today. I want to be pulled out of class, and I want to be told that I have to take this off. I mean, we all got an email earlier today about someone who had to wear a t-shirt of shame. That's what they nicknamed it within their school. There's no way that's okay. Now, I know there's a lot of mixed opinions and emotions here, and I say this with the utmost respect for trustees and senior administration, this isn't necessarily something that affects any of you or your constituents. It's something that affects the people in the schools, the students. You're all talking about this extensive consultation with parent councils, but I haven't heard a single thing about consulting the student body yet. Student Senate, the student trustees, the Ontario Student Trustees Association. While you guys were all talking, I took a moment to connect with some student trustees. We have a little group chat where we talk about these things. And something that stood out to me is that at Durham and Hamilton Wentworth and the Toronto District School Board, they have board-wide policies. And I asked them about their consultation process. And they had very little consultation with parents, very little consultation with their communities. Not because they didn't care what they had to say, because the target of their policies and regulations was about who it affected. It was students. They focused on making sure that students felt represented in their policy, that they weren't suppressed or silenced or embarrassed, that it wasn't targeting them. And unfortunately, as we've all pointed out today, there is a group of students that are targeted by these policies, systemically speaking. Female students. It's not right. As a brother to 4 sisters, I see it. I've seen my sisters get pulled out of class for wearing spaghetti straps, being pulled out of an assembly for that. Now, with Durham and Hamilton, the reason that I point these out is because their policies and procedures are very broad. I mean, so is Toronto District School Board's. It's simply the backbone, the very skeleton of it. And then from there, it's just all about methods of enforcement. I want to quickly quote, sorry, I don't mean to take too much time, Toronto District School Board's policy. The policy therefore provides choices for students. Choices. And does not encourage anyone's choice, but rather directs students on what's inappropriate. Who are we to wake up and tell kids, you can do this, you can't do that? I mean, it's their body. Full autonomy is so important. We hear the stories from our speakers about 7-year-olds, and we heard differing opinions from trustees tonight. But I think what's really important that we consider is that this whole motion is a step forward. It's important. And it allows us to focus on allowing our students to feel comfortable in their schools. And if we want to stick to our strategic priorities, I think this is definitely something that's long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Jean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do think that there are a lot of parents, they do worry. And it's kind of breaking the trust. And if you send your kids to the school and the environment is like a party, a night party, and I don't think it's a good environment for study. And as we are a society, we have to have some rules and policies to obey. Like what I just now I did, I kind of offend the rules. I accept. I have to follow the rules to make sure the whole system moves smoothly. But I think the code of conduct for the dressing code is a way to protect the environment, the circumstance, to be more supportive to the students to achieve their main purpose is to learn knowledge. And to protect this environment, we have to have some rules. We have to follow something. And as a student, they need to be educated to follow rules. Sometimes I break rules, I apologize, and I think I need to be trained better to follow rules and to follow the system to make the system better. I think I respect the freedom of anything, but the freedom has to have something to limit it. Because you have to respect other people, most of other people, their safety, their environment, and to be more supportive to most of the people. So I do think consultation is a good way to gather those points, to make logic, clear. And I don't think it's a good way for us to interrupt, to say, oh, no matter what, it's minor. You cannot do anything on that. I think it's not good to be so excluded. We want inclusive, but we are kind of block part of the opinions, and we are forcing other people, a lot of people, to accept it because we hold the flag of freedom. So I really don't think it's logic. but I respect your opinions, but I feel very disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Chin. I do have a comment to wrap this up, and then so I'm going to be supporting this amended motion. The motion itself is calling for a review of the current code of conduct under the lens of anti-racism, anti-oppression, equity, etc. All commitments our board has actively been supporting in our policies and practices. The details of the dress code policy are not prescriptive here in this motion, and that is a very important point for me. I'm not an expert in this. I don't know what should or should not be in a dress code, and I have a certain perspective that I can use to determine whether I believe specifics of a dress code should be included or discluded, and that's kind of my point. When we hear words like decency or distraction in reference to how people dress, we have to understand that there are inherent power structures that determine what is decent and who is distracted. We focused on girls and women a lot in these discussions. This also affects our students of color, our students with protections under the Human Rights Commission. The standards we have set need to be reviewed and updated. We have an opportunity and an obligation to do so now with what we know now about the voices who are left out here. Thank you. And whose experience has been elevated in authority. The lens of equity and inclusivity is longer than my own and your own personal lenses. I don't know yet what best belongs in a dress code and what does not, but I'm in favor of developing this in consultation with parents that continues the work of equity, diversity, indigenization, and inclusion in its development that we have already been doing. Do I have any other last comments before I call the question?
Can I ask a last question?
No, we've already had 2 comments from you, but I do have a
I'd like
second
to split
comment.
the motion, please.
Pardon me?
Split the motion for voting purposes.
Split the motion how? The amendment was defeated, so there is nothing on the floor to
So I can vote. That isn't defeated. So I'm going to ask for that it be split. That's a common democratic thing.
There is no, we debated
Point
the
of order,
motion and it
yeah.
was defeated.
Yeah, point of order, Madam Chair, if I could. It's the amendment that would split anything was defeated, so this is only on the main motion. We've all had a chance to speak. There's nothing to split unless somebody wants to propose another amendment at this point. There's nothing to split, so that's out of order, I would say.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the question. I know that we've had a lengthy discussion. I thank you all very much. I know we get really heated in this, and I think it's for a good purpose. We just need to focus on why we're here, which is student success and well-being. So,
excuse me. Sorry.
I'm going
Can someone just read the amendment
amended?
that did get passed?
The amended motion?
Yeah, I don't remember what the first part was.
Certainly. So that the GEC-DSB review and update the current code of conduct regulation in the 2022-2023 school year with a board-wide student dress policy that is grounded in equity, anti-oppression, anti-racism, anti-discrimination, and equitable and inclusive education that recognizes Ontario Human Rights Commission protected grounds, that treats dress code violations as minor and holds that no student should be subjected to removal from class for dress code violations or embarrassed or shamed in the process of a dress code inquiry. A recorded vote has been requested. I will start with those on the phone. Trustee Olmsted.
Support.
Trustee Hatfield. Trustee Hatfield, are you muted maybe?
Yes, I was muted, sorry. So I do basically support all the intentions of the motion, even though I had some difficulty with the wording, but I will support it.
Thank you. Trustee Cook. Trustee Halberstadt.
Opposed?
Trustee Sipkar.
Support.
Trustee Sartori.
Support.
Student Trustee McCowie.
Support.
Trustee Leclerc.
Support.
Trustee Burgess.
Support.
Sorry, can you turn your mic on?
Support.
Thank you. Trustee Jean?
Oppose.
And I support, and that passes. Thank you very much. We are down to L9. Our notice of motion, as it is in front of us, in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, it is recommended that the GECDSB propose an appropriate variation of the TRC's call to action number 94 for school board members to adopt as a voluntary oath or affirmation of allegiance upon assuming their office as elected board members. Trustee Burgess, would you like to move it? Do I have a seconder to put it on the floor? Trustee Leclerc. As the mover, Trustee Burgess?
Thanks, Madam Chair, if I could speak to it. Trustees, I sent you all rationale prior to this evening so that you could look at the logic behind this. For those who are watching or listening or even interested, when a school board member gets elected on whatever that day is, whether they're filling a vacancy or whether we collectively or individually come to our first day in office, we have two things that we need to do. Well, a few things, but two things that we need to do. One is a mandatory declaration. And I sent you that. It's found in Section 209 of the Education Act. And the mandatory part is says solemnly you declare that you're not disqualified under any act from being a member, and solemnly declare I will truly, faithfully, impartially, to the best of my ability, execute the office, and mentions the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, for example. That's mandatory. All of us who come to the office must declare that in writing and give it to the Secretary of the Board. In our case is Director Kelly. Also in Section 209 and 3, there describes a voluntary, so this is a may. There's no need to say any of these words, but there is a voluntary oath that is suggested in Education Act. And it says the education also offers a voluntary oath or affirmation of allegiance that school boards may take and subscribe to. And that says, swear, this is quote, swear or affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II or the reigning sovereign for the time being. Now that's voluntary. That was based on what used to be the oath of citizenship for Canada. But 1 year ago today, to this very day, on Indigenous Peoples Day, Call to Action number 94 was enacted. And Call to Action 94 speaks specifically about the oath of Canadian citizenship, that it should be augmented. And it came into act, as I said, it came into law 1 year ago exactly. And the Government of Canada did replace the oath of citizenship with the following words: I swear or affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada, including treaties with Indigenous peoples, and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. Now, again, that's the oath of citizenship. I'm talking about the voluntary oath or affirmation of allegiance. And the only one that is mentioned in the Education Act is that short little blurb about being faithful to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Yeah, we are all getting rid of our names. That's it. I don't know what that is. Poltergeist in the board office. What I'm suggesting, and I've had lots of consultation, and I will say across the province about this, and I did make aware to administration and to the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee, and I have spoken with the Indigenous Trustees Council at OPSPA, and I've spoken with lots of different people. This is specifically geared to the voluntary oath or affirmation for publicly elected trustees, not trustees that were Indigenous trustees, for example, that are appointed by their nations, within their district. It can apply to them, should they choose that. I mean, it's up to them. But if you run publicly, whether you're whatever, one of the qualifications for running as a school board member is you must be a Canadian citizen. Now, we could argue whether that's fair, but that's the law. You have to be a Canadian citizen for eligibility. So there's an assumption there. If you've ever been to a citizenship ceremony, oftentimes a citizenship judge will invite participants, those who are supporting in the audience, those people, families who are supporting those who are getting their citizenship, to also repeat the oath. And it's a very, very moving experience, because if you're someone like me who was born in Canada, who never had to take an oath of citizenship, it's a recommitment of what it might mean. Now, when we swear into office a voluntary oath, I just think that we, in our journey with our Indigenous education protocol, with our acceptance of the calls to action, and in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, that in our voluntary oath proposal, that you can omit any word you want from, we should at least suggest that we align ourselves with something like the oath of Canadian citizenship, and make a commitment to recognize ourselves as treaty people. It's essential for our work. It aligns with our strategic priorities. It aligns with OPSPA's priorities of the province, priorities of the nation. I think as an elected person that we should propose a good model, something a little better than education, what's in the Education Act. The Education Act is not prescriptive. It doesn't say that we have to do this, so there's no impediment for us to do this. So this is not for us, it's for the next board. And the motion does not say the words that I proposed in the stuff that I sent to my colleagues. But for an example, we could have an oath or an affirmation of allegiance that says, I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada, including the Constitution, which recognizes and affirms the Aboriginal and treaty rights of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I've had a suggestion, because this was written, again, the calls to action, 2015 language evolves too. There's some objection amongst Indigenous peoples to not use Aboriginal. So I would suggest those words I just said, but just substitute the word with Indigenous. You'll find folks that won't like that either, but it's more acceptable. So I'm suggesting this. I hope you support it. I hope that the next board, when they come into office, can choose to look at those words and mince out what ones they want to say, but I think it strengthens and aligns with our strategic priorities to be treaty people.
Thank you. I have Trustee Sipcar for a question.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am planning on supporting the motion, but my question is, it's kind of a TBD. It's to be determined as to exactly what that oath will be. What is the correct venue? I'm again assuming policy committee, but I don't know if that's just in consultation with administration. It doesn't really seem like there's a place for it, so I'm just wondering where that oath or affirmation of allegiance will be developed and then represented to the board.
Director Kelly?
That's a really good question through you, Madam Chair. I don't know where that could be done. Striking committee could be, I mean, you'd have to, I guess it'd have to be before that because you're being sworn in. So, sure, try.
Point 4 information, it's the duty of the secretary of the board.
That would be Director Kelly.
So I think,
So the Director
I
Kelly
think the
would have
buck
to do
stops
that.
with you. I think the buck
Okay, I see
stops
what
with
you're
the
saying.
secretary of the board in that you give the document of the mandatory declaration and the optional voluntary oath or affirmation. So I think that you could prepare that almost any way you wanted, but I would think that through policy would be a good way of vetting the words. But the buck stops with the secretary, I think. That's also in the Ed Act, right?
Yeah, thank you very much, Trustee Burgess, for that.
Trustee Subgraddio, supplemental.
So if I'm understanding correctly, will this come back to the board as needing another approval, or it'll just now, the decision will rest with Director Kelly, and then it will come back whoever is around the table at the next opportunity, or when the board is sworn in, will be given the opportunity to read it. It wouldn't be something that we're vetting again, is my question, in terms of wordsmithing at this board level.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would see it as voluntary, and I would bring it forward, and if that's acceptable, that's what I would do.
I'm personally fine with that. I just wanted clarification on the process, so thank you.
Trustee Ching?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have, I'm not against this motion. I just have question. If the elected trustee, they refuse to, if anybody refused, that's fine? So if they refuse, that's fine? Okay. So also I'm thinking that why should we force somebody to do and to vote, yeah, because based on our debating previously, we kind of respect freedom. So they are elected, and why do we have to force somebody to take oaths, to respect anybody, to take any, rules, policies? I don't know. It's elected official, so why we have to put some obligation, not obligation, you must have to do something to, I don't know what's the point of doing that.
So the Education Act does make one portion of our declaration mandatory. That is part of the Education Act, and we cannot change that. We would be in contravention of the Education Act. The second portion is what we're dealing with right now, which is voluntary. You don't have to say it at all. You can change it in some way, or you can use the one that we currently have. What this is asking is to make a recommendation to the incoming board that second voluntary portion would contain something like what the Truth and Reconciliation number 94 suggests, which is the inclusion of Indigenous and treaty peoples. This would be do you recall, we get a piece of paper when we're reading that out? This would be on that piece of paper as the voluntary portion. No one is allowed to not say the first portion, that we are legally able to be elected officials. That's in the Ed Act, and we can't take that part out. But the voluntary portion, we would be making a suggestion to the wording of that voluntary portion.
Okay, I understand what you mean. Again, I'm thinking, why should we push them to verify if they support this? They don't have to tell, right? They don't have to tell their position on the oath. And how I don't know, when you take the oath, and you want them to leave, or they say, oh, I'm against it, or just, if they stand there, it's kind of put them aligned with this group. So I know, I understand, I support that, but I'm just thinking the logic of doing that. Okay.
It certainly would be a personal choice. It certainly would be a personal choice that the way that they choose to act in that moment would be a personal choice.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Leclerc.
Yeah, just quickly, I support this motion because, again, it aligns with the work that we continue to do. It's optional. As somebody that's served on the Indigenous Education Committee, I think this is something that aligns with the work that we're doing for Truth and Reconciliation, and it is a recommendation out of the Act, or the Commission report, so I do support it. and it's optional.
Thank you very much. Trustee Sartori.
Yeah, well said, Trustee Leclerc, and I won't belabor my comments at this time in the evening, other than to say I'm in full support. I think it's an excellent suggestion, timely, and I appreciate the comments and information provided by both yourself and the chair as to process.
Thank you very much. I will call the question on this, but yeah, absolutely.
I just want to say something because it does, I don't want to be, when I put the motion forward, I didn't realize it would come forward on June 21st. I just think that's kind of fortuitous. It's just weird. It's just weird. So I don't want to signal something that isn't there. This is timely, and it's been under discussion since I put it forward at OPSPA since September of 2021. So it is something we want to work on provincially.
That's great, and I appreciate that because I think it would be great for us to have led in this way, especially if we're making those suggestions at OBSPA. And I will say that that especially for me, thinking about signaling work that we have done over these 4 years together to a next group of people who may be taking up the mantle of what we do, this is a good signal to them of some of the work that we've committed to, and so I'm in support of it as well. So I will call the question on this motion in front of us. All in favor? And that passes. Thank you very much. I have just been reminded by Trustee Cook that my alarm did go off because we passed trustee question period, and we are almost coming up to notices of motion. Is it okay with everybody if we just continue through anybody in opposition to continuing through the agenda as we see it? I don't want to. No. Okay. Thank you very much. So we are on to the report from the Director of Education, Director Kelly.
It's my pleasure to show you some students and some things that are happening in school, because June is a wonderful month in education, not only because it's the end of the school year, but it's also filled with so many celebrations. And I believe this June there is so much more joy than usual because of the hardships we've endured for the last 2 years. Track and field days are very special events this year, since kids could finally get out and run and jump and compete in case of these, look at these smiling faces at Central Public School, and they've earned some ribbons. The weather has been particularly decent this month, albeit a little bit hot at times, but it has allowed for some outdoor activities and learning. Checkers was the name of the game one day at McWilliam. Earlier this month, we acknowledged the winners and all the participants in the annual Board Digital Photography Contest. These are a few examples of the entries which are available to be viewed publicly at the Gibson Gallery in Amherstburg this year, and there was a nice celebration about that. Grade 8 trips were back on this year. This group of A.V. Graham graduates boarded a bus for a fun-filled day in Toronto. And last week, we honored 41 Greater Essex County District School Board students at a graduation ceremony for those who have identified as Indigenous. For the first time, we presented the Every Child Matters scholarships to Aidan Dillon of Herman and Lindsay Tran of General Amherst. June is always a great time for community building because it's warm and the nights are longer. And at Queen Victoria, they held a very successful outdoor movie night to bring their school community together one more time before the end of the year. 3 of our schools are closing at the end of the month. Parkview is one of them, and they held a closing ceremony last week. Eastwoods is tomorrow night, and General Amherst held theirs earlier in the month. All this month, we have been proudly flying pride flags at our schools and board offices. Although there has been some unfortunate incidents of theft and vandalism, we remain determined to show our full support to our 2S LGBTQIA+ students and staff and everyone in the communities we serve. It's always great to see our students care about their schools and truly want to leave them in better shape than when they arrived. And at Centennial Central Public School in Comber, students helped clean up some of the stuff that got out of the way in their schoolyard during this year. And finally, I want to take some time to recognize some tremendous support we received this year from some wonderful community partners. At 10 of our schools, Gains and Steps classes were beneficiaries of the Toronto Blue Jays and the Jays Care Foundation. They got hats, t-shirts, and equipment that they can keep And we're introduced to an adaptive baseball program that allows everyone to play that great sport. And as well, Sobeys supported our schools with their community partnership grant. It helped fund fitness and nutrition programs in Gains and Steps programs, and which included a day of making their own pizzas, compliments of the good people at Oven 360. And I want to take this opportunity to thank staff, students, and families, and the Board of Trustees for their leadership this year, and wishing everyone a wonderful summer break.
Thank you very much, Director Kelly. It is so great to see smiling faces and everybody having fun. That's great. Do we have any questions for the director this evening? I have particularly loved hearing graduations and hearing kids talking about what do they love about school. It's always the field trips and the extracurriculars. It's so great to hear and see, and I just thank you for highlighting some of those that we don't normally see. So thank you. Okay, report from the OPSPA director, Trustee Burgess.
Thanks, Madam Chair. It's an oral update, and there are documents, and I will forward them. They've just been completed, but recently I went up to Ottawa to participate in our annual general meeting and have the elections for our executive. There's quite a change in the OPSPA executive. The president remains Kathy Abraham, cheapers. Kathy Abraham was acclaimed, but the other executives have changed. So Kathleen Woodcock was second vice president. She's now first. And Catherine Puros. So we have a Kathy, a Kathleen, and a Catherine. So we're going to have to be very careful who we call what. But it's a spectacular executive, and some of the regional chairs have also changed. We realized that those who stood for election made a declaration that they would be running in the fall, so that they were signaling to those who could, vote for them that it wasn't a totally wasted vote. The general public will decide ultimately, but the executive is very strong, and they know that with the priorities and with the large governance review that we've had through Project Compass, through the whole organization, and the equity audit that OPSPA has had, it's a real, again, turning point for the organization, in that we know that there's some really significant work ahead. We also, by the time we convened at the AGM, knew the results of the election, and we had Nick Nanos there to really pull apart all the data. I will say, basically, ultimately, the opinion was it was the election where nobody came and didn't show up to vote. But what I found really disturbing was the lack of, beyond apathy, almost despair amongst young voters. There was just an incredible no-show from young voters, and that's troubling. We talked about student vote and civics and getting people engaged and all the ways we could raise the profile of municipal elections coming up, for example, and whatever. But this is a concern because of just the isolation that we've had, the fatigue of some of the struggles that we've had, in the media, et cetera, that the disengagement of youth in the vote is somewhat alarming. So I flagged that as part of the analysis that Nick Nanos gave us. We also had a partisan panel that kind of dissected things, which was terrific. But I will say that Malik's not in the room, jeepers. The Osta ACO student trustee presentation was spectacular. The panel was outstanding, and the level of maturity and sophistication and understanding what the real heavy issues were gives us such hope and confidence in the leadership that's on deck and in our schools. Just remarkable. So I want to highlight those as part of the experience. Thank you for allowing me to go as your voting delegate and as your board of director. We had 2 board of directors meetings. The first one, the last one of the old organized board, and we dealt with a good bit of business, and then the organizational meeting, and that showed all the different changes. So I will pass along those updates to you. Lastly, I just want to announce that one of the things that we did as Western Region when we convened was to look over an additional list of prospective scholarship recipients. And there were quite a few applicants that came from across Western Region. So I'll remind you that Western Region is Blue Water, Lambton, Thames Valley, Greater Essex, John McGivney School Authority, and who am I think? Have I got them all? Lambton, Kent, Thames Valley. I think. Nope. Okay, I think I got them all. So from basically Tobermory and then London and down. Okay. So all the applicants came for the PPAN scholarship. And I don't have all the details of the scholarship, but I'm very proud to announce that Ewan Van Wagner from Bell River District High School was the recipient from all of Western Region, and that all of us who were at the regional meeting all had a chance to look over the spectacular resumes and applications. And I want to say that Greater Essex had a couple, and it was very difficult. But congratulations to Ewan as well. And that can end my report, and I will put something together for the minutes, et cetera. But all of the things are online now at the opspa.org website. And then if there's anything that's confidential, then you just have to enter into the members area, and you can get something there too, because we also did have some confidential updates. This is a labor-intensive year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Burgess, and thank you for your work on our behalf, and for attending and keeping those relationships alive with our not only our regional partners, but certainly our Ontario partners.
Can I just add one fun thing? Because when you said it's so nice to see everybody having fun and everything else, the networking ability amongst colleagues, I have to say that you just don't get that on Zoom meetings. In 2.5 years of Zoom meetings, it's just not the same. Thursday night was a trivia contest, and I want to say Greater Essex was on the winning team to the very end, and Sheila McKinnon was on the rival team to the very end. I just want to say it was an arm wrestle, and we got down to 3 tiebreaker questions. Both teams answered them correctly, and unfortunately at the what do you call it, sudden death, whatever. Who is the author of Dune? Yeah, well, that's kind of what we.
Frank.
That's what we kind of. There you go. There you go. You're on the other team, so that's the one that we failed on, and I just didn't bring the ribbon home. I just want to say I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for that valiant effort. Yeah, thank you for that valiant effort on our behalf. Thank you so much. We do have some people that would know in this room, so that's wonderful. Thank you very much for that. I'm always. I feel the same when I show up at in-person events, that it's those interstitial things that I'm so grateful that we have back. So thank you very much for that, and looking forward to that written report as well. We are now on to our international languages overview. I will note that Mr. Dawson, who normally does this for us, he is celebrating a graduation tonight at A.V. Graham, which I am unfortunately having to miss. But do we have someone here who's doing that overview? Superintendent Hillman, go ahead.
Thank you, and I'll draw your attention to page 139. This is a written report. We do an annual international languages update. Our goal for the last number of years has been to grow the program in terms of number of students participating, number of classes, and the number of languages. So we were very pleased this year to continue that. We made a determination in the summer to plan exclusively for an online model this year. That allowed us to avoid pivoting and ensure what we started with we could finish. That turned out to be a good decision, I believe. We saw a significant increase of over 400 students, so it's the largest group we've ever had by hundreds. In this model, we were able to add an additional language, Gujarati, and because of that, we were able to start knowing where we were heading. So we were able to engage in probably more significant community outreach than we normally can, and we're able to offer training lessons for our international languages instructors. So that's the information, and if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to respond.
Thank you very much. That is quite the jump. I'm so proud to hear that. Do we have any questions about our international languages overview? Trustee Chin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like last year, my kid is in the international language program. Yeah, I do appreciate. It's very well organized, and they learned a lot. So thank you. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I love hearing that. That's great. I do have a question. So the online model was incredibly successful. Will we be looking to continue that? Is that a way for it to kind of be more accessible to more people? Do we believe that they will have a hybrid model? How are we looking at doing that in future years, or what have we learned from this?
Lots of questions. We learned a lot. We see value in the online model for a couple of reasons. We have families who engage in the model who are outside of Windsor Essex when it's virtual. So that's in some ways how the market can open up, and that's wonderful. We have some languages where it would be very difficult for us to offer a class of 16, students traveling from all areas of Windsor Essex, but we could offer a virtual class in that sense. So we aren't going to use the H word, but we are going to consider offering both in-person and virtual programmings. A language like Arabic, for example, we can fill 16, 17, 18 classes, so we see a reason to offer that virtually and potentially have 3 classes that choose that virtually. We have some smaller groups that we think offering virtually will be helpful. And when we deal with the instructors in person, particularly for our youngest learners, is a better way to learn a new language. It is so much about face-to-face and mouth-to-mouth and those types of things. So it might cost us a few numbers. I don't know. Again, I think many of our numbers were able to join because it was less of a commitment of travel, etc. But we think there'll be a good balance of both. So we've already started our planning around that, and I'll be happy to update you next year on that. Or answer what Gujarati is, because I studied it, if anybody had that question for me.
Yeah. Can you answer that question?
Well, of course. Gujarat, of course, is a state in India where they speak Gujarati, and of course, the Gujarati language is more than 1,000 years old and is spoken by more than 55 million people around the world, in other parts of Southeast Asia, including Pakistan and Mumbai. And it is the fastest growing new Indian language in the United States and Canada. Thanks for the question.
Thanks for the prompt. Usually that's very interesting. Thank you very much. See, we're all lifelong learners. Thank you very much for that. All right, we have our GECPIC report this evening. Oh, we have our guest. We have a guest this evening. We have Kristen Ciapis will be here to update us on a GECPIC report. Thank you for sitting with us tonight. You have the mic. Can you turn the mic on?
Thank you. So I know we're going a little over time tonight, so I'm not going to read out too much. You have the summary there in your package from our various meetings throughout the year. GECPIC this year was able to receive a number of different presentations that really helped guide our work. But I am going to read out the chair's closing thoughts. I'm reading on behalf of our chair, Stephanie Slipik, who's not able to be with us tonight. So these are her words. This year, GECPIC made some great strides in the work we committed to, with the goal of improving the communication and resources available to our board parent councils. Using the survey results of parent council chairs from the 2021 year, we were able to really hit the ground running and establish a trajectory and set goals for our subcommittee work. The Resource Committee's focus of identifying, prioritizing, and then developing resources was founded off the focus group work that the Communications Subcommittee completed. Then coming together as one committee, we were able to streamline and identify the top 5 resources that our parent council chairs would gain the most value out of, and truly help them establish a foundation of basic operations and best practices. The resources that were prioritized with the goal of having them available to our parent councils for September 2022 are the purpose of council, roles and responsibilities, an annual checklist, how to run nominations and elections, and networking and information opportunities through town halls, which our first offering will be in September of 2022, hosted by this current year's GECPIC. The team this year was also pleased to gain insight and provide parent feedback on the various topics that were presented to us this year, from the 22-23 school calendar to the board's work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, to the 2021 Ontario Parent Survey and how the board has utilized that information within the classroom. Each opportunity has been valued and appreciated. I am truly proud of the work we have completed this year, as well as the momentum that we will be bringing into the upcoming year as we work towards further resource development and incorporating opportunities for the Parent Council chairs to network, learn, and hopefully gain a better understanding of the work GECPIC does. Improving the relationship between GECPIC and our parent councils will hopefully yield us a stronger presence and increased confidence within our local parent communities and their work to help improve student success. It was an honor to lead this group of parents, community partners, and administration with the support and guidance from our trustee representative, Alicia Higgison, and of course, Superintendent Jeff Hillman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have a question from Trustee Burgess.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, the proposal to have town halls, what would that look like? What are you thinking?
As we worked our way through some of the survey work that we did both in last year and this year, we brought together parent council chairs in virtual town halls, or not virtual meetings where we were able to sort of facilitate a conversation. So I think the thought of having those kind of town halls ongoing is to bring together as many parent council chairs as are available as soon as we can in September, to help to provide resources and answer questions. And the thought was starting that in September would allow us to start to get to know people right as they're accepting positions as chairs of their parent councils, armed with the resources that we have started to put together based on our work from this year.
So supplemental, so that would be everybody or families of schools or by issue, or like, what are you thinking?
Based on the participation rate that we've had, it would be certainly doable to create an open invitation to everyone and to see if we can get as many people as possible around the table. During some of our initial conversations, we were able to do that with some success, even with a larger group of people, but we are able to break it down smaller if we have many people who RSVP. Yeah.
Great. Do we have any other questions? I just want to say
participants are waiting in the lobby. To admit all participants in the lobby, press *2 1.
Okay. I would just like to say that that I joined GECPIC my first year, and watching the progression of how the values of that team, even as the team has changed, come to fruition now has been something wonderful. There's always been this desire to connect GECPIC and parent councils, and I think that this group has over time done a really great job at making those overtures and having that trusting relationship between those two. So that's been great. To that?
Permission to thank the vice chair for attending till 10 o'clock, chairperson.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for staying here, even though I know you love a school board meeting.
I do love a long school board meeting. I'm one of the only people in the world, I think. I do. I really love it. I like it when you guys fight. It makes me so happy.
We always aim to oblige. So thank you very much, Ms. Siapis, and thank you to Ms. Lipiak as well, and to the rest of the GECPIC committee, and to Superintendent Hillman as well.
Thanks very much.
We're moving down to M5, update on diversity, equity, and inclusion actions. Do we have a presentation?
Just to speak briefly to the report, there is, through you, Madam Chair, an extensive number of initiatives and an extensive number of workshops and policy reviews and things that are underway. I think it speaks to a huge commitment on the part of the board and the senior team in terms of the work. I won't certainly go over it, but I do want to highlight a couple of things. For example, our equity consultant, Amina Abdul, had done a presentation in consultation with members of the Muslim community, and she presented a workshop for educators and students entitled Allyship, Muslims and Mental Health to mark the one-year anniversary of the tragedy in London, Ontario. And so that was something that was really getting into our classrooms, getting into with our students. I do want to again draw your attention to some of the work that we're doing in the the Pride in Education document that was referred to as well, and I know that you're familiar with that, but I think there's been an extensive resource created there. And we have done some work with presenters at our administrative meeting, having Eva Olson. If you haven't had the chance to hear her, it is incredibly moving, and her discussion about the Holocaust. There's much in here, and you will see also the summer learning programs and information that's going to be available to the training, the toolkits. There's a lot there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, as would the team, but I think that you'll see that we're doing lots of work on many levels in the area of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Certainly, that is very obvious, and there's a lot that's probably not even in here that continues ongoing as well. Do we have any questions for the senior team or the director on this? Thank you very much for not only your commitment to the work, but for keeping us updated as we go along. It is a lot of work, and it's not only good for us as a board to see what's happening, but to keep these as a public document and to be reflective of the community's desire for this work as well. And I thank you very much for the work that it takes to collate that for us and to make that more public. So thank you for that. We have a climate action plan update. Is that Superintendent Armstrong? Wonderful.
Thank you. If you recall, back in November, the board passed a motion to declare a climate emergency and asked administration to develop a climate action plan. So included in your package tonight is an update in terms of the work that we've completed so far with respect to the climate action plan. The report identifies a number of items, including the preliminary plan that we've developed so far, a status on the various action items within the plan, and as well as a summary of the current action items that we are working on outside the plan that are part of through an environmental lens. For example, we've provided an update on the environmental stewardship programming we've done, some of the environmental lens of the work from our capital projects, our energy procurement initiatives, single-use plastics reduction, and of course waste minimization. We're very super excited about this work, very excited about it. And our plan is to complete the climate action plan in June of 2023, and we'll bring that forward when we bring the 5-year energy conservation and demand plan to the board as well. And I'd like to thank Kathy Quenville. She's been online since 7 o'clock, listening diligently on the phone. And of course, Julie, who is here this evening. Between the three of us, we've been meeting monthly to do the work on this, and I'm really appreciative of their efforts. And we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Quenville, for joining us this evening as well. Yeah. Do we have any questions for this team? Trustee Halberstadt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just was looking through your comprehensive report and all that you're doing. That the one thing that stuck to me was solar roofs. I know we've done that in the past, and haven't done it recently. And just, is there any opportunity to do that?
Thank you for that question to you, Madam Chair. Solar energy is, renewable energy of any type is definitely an opportunity. It has to be weighed against the cost and the benefit of that. So one of the things, besides even solar, some of the things that we're doing that are a little bit more what we consider impactful, like the energy generated, electricity generated from solar, the cost to put it in and the benefits, like the offset of the energy cost, is really not very good payback period right now. But some of the things that we are doing that are using renewable is there's some consideration of even looking at using geothermal, which is a renewable source. in certain projects that were coming up, and we haven't fully investigated it yet, but it's some of the forward thinking that we're trying to do in capital projects to be able to offset our dependency right now on natural gas, which if anyone's looked at their heating bill lately is terrible. So those are the kind of things that we're doing, but we have many solar panel projects that we've funded through the initiatives that the government put previously, and we will continue to keep those active and ongoing. The ones on Suzuki, the ones on Tecumseh Vista, the one on Sandwich Secondary. There's definitely, if pricing on these systems gets a little bit better, we probably would look at them to offset some of our energy costs, absolutely.
Supplementary, so you did go through a program, or we did, and when did it stop as far as, I think it was tied into grants from the government, right?
Yes, thank you for that. It's the FIT projects, feed and tariff projects. We partnered with a company who did a lot of repairs on our roof, who installed solar panels. I'm going to suggest, you're asking me to really think back. I think it's 26 schools, and we collect a monthly or a yearly fee for using our roofs. We don't own those systems. At the end of the 20 years, which I think we've got another 10 to go, they'll be taking them off, or we'll be renegotiating what we're doing with them at that time. What they would then do, and I'm not sure what the agreement says, but what they would then do is just feed or offset our costs at that school. Again, that remains to be seen what happens with those.
I did have a question, if I see no other ones. There is so much in this. There is a ton of work that goes on in this. I do have like very specific questions about it, but I may pass those on just and I think of it in this broader context, because the questions that I had were mostly around this organics collection service and thinking about whether the county is doing the same thing as the city, and how are we involving, what ultimately came to my mind was how are we involving students? So the education of this, of all of this mountain of work, and that how interconnected it is with everything else we do. How is this filtering down to an education piece for our students, both in secondary and in elementary, and what pieces of it are kind of flowing through the curriculum or are supplementary to the curriculum? I know some students are involved in recycling programs at school and things like that, so I'm wondering what sorts of things are coming down as an educational piece from the mountain of this work.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. As you can see on the recommended setup of the committee, the superintendent of program features strongly on that list. We've always, since we began eco schools, always knew that there had to be a direct link with the curriculum. But that there had to be some education of our students. The last 2 years has shown when recycling and touching things was such an evil thing when COVID was happening, that some students in some schools have lost their way, even in terms of simple things like recycling. So we need to build that back up. We need to, and through Superintendent Howitt's leadership and hiring our eco schools teachers and our outdoor environmental teachers, they have been instrumental in hitting so many kids with real information and real activities that connect them to the environment and their impact on it. So it's a marriage made in heaven, me and Clara. But yeah, and she's vital. Like that program and curriculum is vital to ensuring the longevity of any climate action plan. Thank you.
If I could just further add to, we've presented to Student Senate because we appreciate sometimes students need to hear from their peers about the importance of the work, and the work is going to be such a cultural change in how we behave here at the board. And all the decisions that we make are going to be through an environmental lens. So that education piece is it's students, it's staff, it's childcare, it's our vendors, it is community partners, it's renters. It's very broad. So it's going to take a period of time, but I think through the programming department, through eco schools, and partnering through our student senate and with our student councils, it'll be very important.
Thank you for that, and you bring up a good point that it's well beyond our schools, right? It goes out into our communities, not just through our students, but certainly through our students, but also through everybody else that we interact with in the community. It's great to see us lead in that way, and thank you very much to everybody who's involved in that. I'm quite proud and very inspired by that, so thank you. Do we have any other questions on our climate action plan? Thank you very much. We're on to chair's reports. I'll be quick tonight as we've done a lot of work together already. I want to acknowledge again that today is Indigenous Peoples Day, which is a day of celebration for the diverse cultures, unique heritage, and contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. As the director mentioned, we had the honor of celebrating this past Friday the GECDSB's Indigenous graduates at a beautiful ceremony at St. Clair Center for the Arts. I delivered greetings on behalf of our board and extended our thanks to families, staff, and students on their support and achievements. I've had the very distinct honor of extending greetings to other graduating classes in these past and coming weeks of June, and it is pure joy to be able to gather in person and feel the energy of being gathered together safely again to celebrate. Our sincere congratulations to all 2022 GECDSB graduates. I want to wish you all a very enjoyable and safe summer. It is wonderful to be ending the year on the high notes of field trips and assemblies and fun fairs and proms. And my gratitude to staff and senior admin for showing up for our students, for their families, and for each other with care and with expertise. You have earned way more than a respite, but a respite I hope you take. To my trustee colleagues, please enjoy your summer safely, and we'll see everyone back here in September. That concludes my chair's report. We are on to trustee question period. Anyone have questions? Cool. Trustee Sartori and then Trustee Cook. Go ahead, Trustee Sartori.
Thank you. So we have had a couple of very warm days already this year, and I wanted to ask a question actually. And Juliana, I'm glad you're here tonight because this is, through you, Madam Chair, will probably be a question that goes to you. So I know that through the course of some ventilation updates that we've been doing, and please keep in mind, I'm not a technical person in this area, so bear with me here, that there was sort of an expectation or a plan that the result of the updates to the ventilation would have an impact on the sort of experienced climate and heat within the schools. And so I'm wondering if there's any sort of update in that area, if there's a way to kind of measure the result and the impact of the, oh yay, okay, I'm gonna stop there.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. The board's building systems officer would love to share that. He's been tracking through our building automation system the results of some of that work at several of the schools. It has been quite dramatic. On days like today when it's 99, there's nothing that's going to touch that. Not even we don't design air conditioning systems for that. But we've had some discussions even with schools like Southwood, and they've noticed a marked change. And it's strictly just as I said before with the humidity. So I would be happy through Trustee Armstrong to share that information. He was really pleased and thinks it's probably a strategy that we should be sharing even with other school boards because it's been quite effective. And has really done a great job. So, yeah, we'll be happy to do that through Trustee Armstrong, or Superintendent Armstrong, my apologies.
Oh my goodness. So thank you so much. I don't have a supplementary question other than I would love to hear information in that area, but do we need a motion for that at all, or we're okay? Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's 2 upgrades tonight. We've had 2 new trustees from senior administration. Trustee Cook, go ahead.
Thank you. So I've received quite a few emails from parents in specifically Ward 6 that are really struggling with childcare. So I'm wondering if any other wards are experiencing the same situation. But in Ward 6, what has happened is Princess Elizabeth has closed their daycare, so a lot of their families are going over to Suzuki and taking their spots. Any of the daycares in the community do not have any openings. Their waiting list is so long, and some of them, the waiting list is so long, they're not even taking any more names to be put on that waiting list. My concern is some of these parents are really very, very concerned and anxious because if they don't get a spot, there's a couple that I talked to, both parents work. One of the parents is going to have to quit work because they don't have any other options. So I'm just wondering, what happened with Princess Elizabeth? Are there any other options? Maybe something that I'm missing? That's my question.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Chair, this is not just an issue in our district. It's an issue in our community, provincially and nationally. We have worked with the CSMC, and I'm getting confusion with my acronyms, from the municipality, in that they are developing a strategic plan to prioritize opportunities to leverage the role of early childhood educators through opportunities for subsidy for training, for paid professional development, through mentorship programs. It's a problem, but it's not just a Greater Essex problem. So we're working with the municipality and support in any capacity that way. And we're working with our transportation department if there are any ways that we can support parents to an alternative site if at all possible. Each inquiry that comes to the board, we try to problem solve if we can possibly find an answer. But it's not a Greater Essex sole problem. It's a community problem.
What happened at Princess Elizabeth? Can you share that? Does anyone know why it closed, if there was an opportunity for it to reopen? Because that would open quite a few spots.
I would have to follow up on that for you.
Thanks for that. And Trustee Sipcar.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So it's my understanding
Kathy Kenville
that
is now
Beaton's-
exiting.
It's okay. That Hugh Beaton's bathroom renovations were scheduled to occur this summer, as well as potential boiler upgrades as well, but it's been pushed out. Is there any idea as to why that can be shared? Thanks.
Yes, there are several projects that have been pushed out till next year. That is one of them. The large renovation that we're continuing on at Kennedy's another one. We've had some shift or some changeover in our staff. We lost in the capital projects department. We lost a key staff member just through retirement last month. Our new one just started. The volume of work that for the last 3 years, I think, that's been going on in capital projects is unbelievable. And that includes the multiple new schools that we're building and the additions and all that stuff, like all the additions under design. I don't know how they're doing it. I never had that quantity of work when I was doing the job. It is extremely large. So some of and we continue to problem solve how to get ahead of this. Civrus last year, the ventilation work, put a real kink in the process here because it was timed. You had to do it in a year or you lose the funding. And the benefits to the board were just too great. So there's a lot of school condition money and school renewal money that we now have to catch up on. So there's a ton of projects that are in design that they're actually going to push up the tender to September, October. But there's 30 or 40 schools that they're touching this summer. And there's only 4 people, right? And so it's a really large workload, and it's not one that's just this year. It's been multiple years now. So yes, they started giving, and we have a group of architects and consultants as well. So what happens is they get overloaded because this is a massive amount of work we're putting on them multiple years in a row. So Brad Giori, the coordinator, has been working diligently trying to get projects ready to tender, trying to get ahead of the work and try to close old projects and try to get these ones getting going. So it was only a volume of work issue. So it will definitely happen. It's first on the list next year. All right.
Any other questions? Thank you for that. It's a lot
I
of work
do.
they've been doing. Oh, Trustee Huckabee, go ahead.
Yep, thank you. So my question is a supplementary, actually, to Trustee Cook's question about daycare spaces in our schools. And my question is specifically about Princess Elizabeth. So I'm assuming the service provider chose to leave the space since there's such a need for it. I can't see any other reason why it closed other than that they chose to leave. And so when that happens, why wouldn't the board be looking to initiate the process to bring in another service provider when we know that there's a need and we know that the space is already available at Princess Elizabeth? So I'm concerned about why we would just let it go.
Thank you for the supplemental question, and through you, Madam Chair. Yes, it is the choice of the provider if they choose to leave. We are not asking anybody to leave. We want daycares in our schools, and there is a process for individuals to apply to take a position, but they're all experiencing staff shortages. That's the problem. It's not one provider issue. Everybody is experiencing staff shortages.
Thank you for the answer, and I certainly understand the dilemma. But would that prevent us from engaging in the process to see if there is a service provider interested in taking over?
No, that wouldn't prevent us from doing that. We would put out the information for any of the providers if they are interested.
So are we doing that for that Princess Elizabeth space?
Yes, that is my understanding.
And when would that go out? Like, when would
I believe that's
parents
already
know
happened.
whether or not that service will be available?
I believe that's already happened.
That the proposal has been put out, or?
Yeah, there's an internal process for it when we work with our providers. I can double check if I've misunderstood, but I believe that that's already happened. The issue of staffing is global with, not global, universal with the providers.
Yeah.
But I will double check with that.
So that there's a chance that there might be a service provider there in September?
I can't tell you that in the moment, but I will follow up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Trustee Burgess.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And it's a question that comes from yesterday's budget meeting and from some of the discussion today about capital projects and climate emergency declarations and the changes we're doing with energy, et cetera. Years ago, we, you're going to have to help me because it was Duke Energy and then it changed and then it changed. Yeah, that's an old name, eh? Boy, I'm going way back. That's who the original agreement was, though, and I'm going to say it was like 2002, 19 what? 1990. What? What? No, I'm thinking of the 25-year kind of like a debenture or whatever, the energy retrofit that we did. Oh, okay, not the first one. I'm sorry. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm talking directly, and I'm sorry. Through you, Madam Chair, my understanding is that when I was here on the board earlier in the 2000s, we took, basically, we said, we need to make these retrofits in our buildings, and the amount of money that we're going to borrow, basically, we're going to see the savings in real time and pay down this borrowing, basically. That's kind of how we worked it. And it was under a program. My question is, are there any incentives or programs like that, because we do have a backlog. We have made some remarkable kind of even meta, analysis that we have some things that we could maybe save some good money on in the interim. Do we ever look at I'm going to say a debenture, but it's not a debenture, but some sort of borrowing against some retrofits that are well backlogged, knowing that the workload and the expertise in actually implementing these things is also like a staffing problem. I understand that, but do we ever look at things like that for capital projects, and are there any schemes going now with the whatever provincial, that's a good British word, programs?
Thank you for that to you, Madam Chair. I'm sure Superintendent Armstrong can speak to debenturing. We started down the path of energy retrofit projects that were funded by third parties and that we paid off through energy savings. We did that, I think, 4 times. And what happened was the government started providing, our ministry started providing significant renewal money. With my little department of 2 people, just overwhelmed to deal with energy efficiency, to deal with school condition, and it's been ongoing since I've been in the job, and it's never stopped in one way, shape, or form. So with school condition improvement, which I think it's in its 6th or 7th year now, we do the energy retrofits ourselves. We have developed a good team, and we've done a huge experience. We have huge experience that allows us to, in every project, that's what we look for. We have taken care of all the low-hanging fruit. Now we are getting into the more esoteric stuff, like building envelope, like looking at things like how do we get rid of natural gas in schools, those kind of things. So we are beyond the, like even LED lighting retrofits. That was the very first thing that we did with school condition improvement, and every single school is now LED. And we did it during the school year without any interruption to class. So our team is smart enough, they can do it now. So, and the money's there through school condition. So that's why I wouldn't look at doing anything else. Also, Kathleen Quenville, our Energy Environmental Officer, always looks for energy incentives and paybacks. We've gotten a ton of money back on LED lighting through the electricity vendor. Okay, so those kind of things. So she does that as well. So I'll let Shelley speak.
Sure, just thank you for that. And just to kind of follow up on that, in terms of the debentures, I know this has come up a few times, so we've had discussions with the ministry about this. The ministry's position is that boards cannot issue debentures any longer. When it comes to doing capital-related work in a school, they provide capital funding for that. If it costs more to do that project, then you do an approval to proceed. If you sell your surplus properties and you have proceeds of disposition, then you can go to the minister and ask for approval to apply some of that towards the cost overruns that you have. If you have needs that are not capital related, then you could borrow money, but you need to work through the Ontario Financing Authority, which is really a branch of the provincial government, to secure that funding. So it's where our hands are pretty much tied.
Thanks very much. That's a good update. I didn't realize that the ministry actually had a policy sort of thing. You cannot do debenturing anymore. I'm grateful. I honestly didn't know that because we keep paying them up. We don't take a new one. I just thought that it was, I didn't know it stopped. So that's an important thing to know, and it really does restrict us. Thanks.
It's very complex, all of that. Thank you for your work in that. All right. Do we have any notices of motion tonight, trustees? Any notices of motion? Seeing and hearing none. Any announcements? Trustee Burgess?
I'm very grateful to be here and everything, but I could have been at Kingsville Public School. All of us could have been at a graduation, so just one last kick at congratulations to all the graduates. And we can't get to everyone, and sometimes there's multiples on certain evenings, etc. But just so proud of the graduates, particularly for what they've experienced in order to graduate at this point, considering the last few years. So lovely to have that, and congratulations, go Cobras.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you very much. Trustee Sipkar.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make an announcement that this upcoming Thursday, well, first of all, I guess the bigger announcement is that it's the Giles closing, although it's not a technical closing, it's just a moving to the new building. And so there's two events that the school's doing to celebrate that, both the ending of Giles campus and also the start of the James L. Dunn. And so there's the closing ceremonies on June 23rd, right after school, which Ms. Siapas actually, I think, sent out an email today. I'm actually not able to attend, even though my daughter attends the school. I have exams that day, so I'm not able to make it, but I would encourage other trustees to go. And then on the actual last day of school, so the school gets to end a day early, which is exciting for the kids, in that they're doing a walk to the new school from Giles, and they're taking a picture in front, and so that's another event that they're doing just with the classes, and so yeah, it will be. I know that it's an exciting time for a lot of the families. It's a bit of a sad time for some people who may not be going to the new building or who will miss Low, because it is a big, beautiful building, but I'm sure that next year at this time they'll all really appreciate the air conditioning. So I think that overall it's a really exciting time, and so they'll be in the new building. So just wanted to share those two announcements.
That's wonderful. The beautiful new building. My goodness, it is beautiful. Thank you very much for that. I have two announcements. You'll receive a copy of the Windsor Council of Home and School Association's invitation to attend an all candidates meeting on September 26th. It's extended to all candidates running for the office of Public School Board Trustee in all wards of the city and county. And you are asked to please confirm attendance to Lisa Tome by September 22nd. And I'll note along those lines that we are in a period of municipal elections, and declaring your candidacy to run for roles in elected public service like those of school board trustees, town and city councilors, deputy mayors, and mayors is available until August 19th. 4 years ago, Alicia Higgison, who put her name in for representing Tecumseh and Lakeshore at the GEC-DSB, would never have known what today's two-time chairperson Higgison would learn. I've been challenged and humbled by the experience, and maybe this role is for you. Or maybe you'd like to help someone you know get elected. Civic engagement is ever so important, so get involved. Those are my announcements. We are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.